Go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the ADHD Coaching Summit. I'm Stephanie from Empower ADHD and Ascend ADHD, and we have Tim here.
Hello, everybody.
So he's joining us today. He's going to be the interviewer slash.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Tim's our head of engagements and partnerships. So we're delighted. We've got Candy Richards from FSB opening day 2. Yeah, so thank you for coming, Candy.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm really, really pleased to be involved in this. I know we've been chatting for quite a while, haven't we, about, some of the challenges that we've seen entrepreneurs who've got ADHD or maybe employees with ADHD have been experiencing. So being able to be involved is really great. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So we start off with a quick question around you and FSB. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to work with FSB.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. So for those of you that have joined the webinar and may not have come across FSB before, I'll just give a sort of little bit of a flavour really about what FSB is. So FSB, abbreviation for the Federation of Small Businesses. So we're an organisation that supports sole traders and small and medium-sized enterprises. We're a not-for-profit organisation set up 51 years ago, actually, and we're a real sort of grassroots lobbying, campaigning organisation that also provides lots of practical support for small businesses. And for me, I joined FSB just over 4 years ago, really. And I joined because throughout my career, really, I've always taken roles on where, even though it sounds a little bit twee, I can make a difference. So I've worked in the charity sector, actually, for a long, long time, in comms, in marketing and events, campaigning. And I think that's really what attracted me to FSB, is giving a voice to people who maybe don't have a voice if they don't have someone standing up for them. And that's what FSB does. It steps in and makes sure that small businesses that, make up the vast majority of businesses actually have a voice and are truly represented. So for me, it's a fantastic role because I can get involved in lots of areas to support small business owners. That can be advocacy, so helping to lobby at central government level or local government, helping to shape policy, but also supporting members and signposting them to support to help them run their business.
And I suppose that's why it's vital to have institutions like the Federation of Small Businesses, because it is a very hard time, almost as always, for small businesses, but particularly at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and you guys know, you run your own small business. When you are running a small business, you have to wear so many hats, don't you? You have to learn so many skills. You have to sort of spread yourself quite thinly. But, the backdrop right now for small businesses is a very tough one. I don't want to sort of bring the webinar down to sort of a presentation. We've only just started, but we do sort of research all the time just to see how small business owners are feeling. And at the moment, confidence is very, very low. Businesses are often in that survival mode, so they're not really being able to grow or create new jobs. They're just trying to hunker down and get through the sort of coming months. And there's lots of changes coming up as well in terms of legislation. We've got the budget around the corner. So it can be tough. Small businesses are brilliant. They make over up 99% of businesses in the UK. And, they create sort of 3 in 5 jobs. So they're actually really fundamental to the economy and society as a whole. But it is tough. And that's why it is so important, like you said, that FSB is there to support small businesses, to make sure that they have a voice, to try and lobby for change, to try and make life a little bit easier when you do run a small business. And I've talked about the sort of advocacy and campaigning work we do, but one of the sort of services, the main services that we provide is sort of free legal support to our members. So particularly in the lens of what we're talking about today, you know, again, when you set up and you run a business, some of the stuff that you need that is really integral, you know, documentation, doing things by the letter of the law, access to independent, you know, funding advice, all that kind of stuff, FSB provides. So it can mean that business owners have that peace of mind that they can run their business, you know, focus on that, and then they can get the right support in a way that is really accessible and affordable. So yeah, it is a lifeline for small businesses, Tim.
100%, and definitely one which is very much needed. So just around ADHD, have you what do your members, what experiences do they tend to have had with ADHD?
Yeah, what do they bring? What do they bring to FSB that they're finding challenging, that they're looking maybe for some help with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was sort of doing some research actually in advance of the webinar, and I know from FSB's own research actually that there's a big chunk of entrepreneurs, a big percentage that, you know, set up their own business because they have a health condition or a disability. You know, and the research around, you know, people who with ADHD becoming an entrepreneur, there is some research out there that shows it can be as much as sort of 20 to 30%. And I think, you know, some of the most charismatic, driven, inspiring small business owners that I know tell me they have ADHD. You know, the person who comes in and brightens up a room and you just look at them in envy and think, wow, they've got so much energy and drive. But also on the flip side, I have seen an increase in members come to me, particularly over the last couple of years, you know, when things, as we've discussed, are tough when you run a small business, come to me and say, Candy, I am finding it tough. It's tough running a business. And some of the areas that often are flagged are around the ability to say no. So taking on a lot of work, sometimes doing things for free because they want to please people, they want to please clients, and then finding that they're in a position where they have an overwhelming amount of work and not enough resources to do that. And that's an area that I've had many businesses sort of come to me and say, what support is out there? And probably the answer to that is, you know, there is support, but it can be challenging to access it. And another area, and I'm so glad, Steph, that you're here, because hopefully you can sort of give us some of your insight, you know, around these challenges.
Please.
It is around managing clients. So again, I've had some members come to me who their sort of preferred way of working or their natural way of working is to do things quite last minute. But then they go in and they've set up their business and they've got multiple clients to deal with, and the clients are becoming a bit nervous that work is coming across to them a bit late or a bit last minute, and it's meaning that they're lacking in confidence. And then what I found is, you know, I've had members come to say to me, you know, managing the client's expectations can be challenging, but then when they get that feedback from clients that they're maybe a little bit happy or they want things to change, is dealing with that feedback and not letting it completely bulldozer them and really impact them as a business owner. So I'm aware that I've raised a few things, but I think probably to condense that, it's around processes and management of the work and the volume of work and preventing burnout, and then being able to manage those clients and those relationships without getting overwhelmed or taking things very much to heart.
Well, I would definitely that.
Several things there. I mean, in terms of I'll start with the managing kind of client expectations and really struggling with that kind of feedback. We see it in the workplace as well. This is a massive issue for managers, you know, trying to provide feedback to their employees with ADHD. And at the root of that, the main issue is the rejection sensitive dysphoria, the RSD, which is wired into like an ADHD's brain is as much as any other of the other traits. It's not something that CBT, you know, can easily overcome. In fact, Dr. Dodson in America came up with this idea that 99% of ADHDs have this particular sensitivity to rejection. That's actual or perceived rejection. And dysphoria comes from a Greek word called, crippling pain. It is just visceral for so many ADHDers. An ADHD could have like, you could be like you're coaching 100 clients and just one, like 99 love you, you've changed their lives, right? There's tangible, so much evidence that, what you've done has been amazing. You may have even saved lives. And then just one. All it takes is one to not be happy or kind of question your process or question you. And for that ADHD, they will not be able to see those other 99. So what they've done well, out of sight, out of mind. And for those ADHDs that are very much inside in mind, that is everything. That's their entire story. And now they may as well just shut up shop and go home because they're crap and, don't want to do this anymore, can't please anyone. Because ADHD is, we tend to catastrophize as well. We've got a negativity bias in the brain. So it can be very difficult to get perspective. And that's something that ADHD coaching really, really massively helps with, is to help that client, have space to process, to pause. And David Gawerk talked about this yesterday, founder of ADCA, exactly how ADHD coaching really benefits ADHDs in this area in particular, because ADHDs often won't pause to kind of even process, what am I thinking? And also the CBT style techniques in terms of, okay, what's the evidence for this? Like, for instance, hang on, 99. It's this one person, 1 out of 99. And they said this because of this particular thing. And actually, that was out of my control. It's like there's so much missed when an ADHD kind of crashes with that RSD. And so it's about helping them get perspective and making sure their achievements, are in sight and in mind, right? So that they make sure they see the accurate picture of themselves. So that's that part. But the RSD is always going to hit. It's always going to hurt, So it's anticipating.
Yeah, and that's really interesting around the coaching, because we've got, it goes up and down, but roughly around sort of 5.5 million small businesses in the UK, but over 4 million, way over 4 million of those are actually sole traders. And running a small business, it can be pretty isolating, and you can end up sort of stuck in your own head and without that peer-to-peer support. One area that we often try and encourage, small business owners to get involved in is networking, that peer-to-peer support. And actually, that's another area, Steph, that can sometimes present those challenges. People, everyone with ADHD is different. I'm not an expert in this field, but I've had business owners come to me who either feel they just find networking too overwhelming, that they feel uncomfortable and they can't therefore access the benefits and that peer-to-peer support, or they end up creating sort of connections, lots and lots of connections, but then struggle to sort of maintain all those relationships. So I have seen those extremes.
Yep, that's exactly it. Yeah, you have, and I've got a few clients that, again, particularly the ADHDs, and if there's sensory overwhelm there as well, and the RSD as well, they're sometimes overly sensitive to how they come across or how they're perceived, and they're pretty brutal. They've got a very negative narrative to begin with. So you put them in there, and again, with the RSD, they could take maybe the fact that no one's kind of coming over to them, that's it, and they fall in a hole, and then that's actually going to impact their ability to be social. So already they kind of failed. But I did have one client that he noticed, a very senior executive in a bank. And so obviously networking is such a big thing for him, and it was always really difficult. But then he got medicated, actually. And for him, he really noticed that all those, negative thoughts, the ruminations, the fears, that noise in his head, dramatically reduced. And he was able to just be himself, and be present, because that's the other thing. Some ADHDers with the distractibility as well, it's that not being able to be present, in these conversations. And then that fear of, if you're not present, you could be taken to be quite rude. You've missed something, or maybe a little bit slow. There is so much, like when you coach around this, like when I coach clients around these fears, it's never just social anxiety. There's so much like specific challenges in the way.
And in terms of the sort of overwhelm and you know, staying on top of the workload, I know a lot of members actually or business owners have come to me and found sort of virtual assistants quite useful, someone to come and take the load away from them on those aspects of running a business that they're finding overwhelming or challenging. Have you found that sort of thing helps as well?
That's crucial. So for ADHD is managing, you know, any administrative tasks, like our brains are hot wired for authentic interest. And for a lot of us, you know, admin, forms, timesheets, you know, for lawyers, because of obviously as well, the time, you know, because there's other executive function difficulties in addition to the lack of interest that's going to make something really difficult. So timesheets, for instance, really hard for lawyers with ADHD to stay on top of those. Forms, chasing invoices, yeah, that's stuff that it's really difficult for an ADHD to prioritize because it's just not interesting, authentically interesting. So being able to delegate that to a VA, being able to just not have to shoot all over yourself all the time and have that barrier in the way is massively freeing. But again, there's a lot that gets in the way of delegation. Usually it's being able to carve out space and time and to be able to find the right person to be able to delegate that to and train them up. And the other thing with ADHD is that perfectionism that's also kind of due to the RSD, the standard that they want things to be done, right? It takes a lot of time to train up someone to be able to get to that standard. It takes specificity. You've got to be specific. It's got to be a person with the right skills. I mean, there is so much in delegation that makes it so difficult for ADHDs to be able to access, you know, that support. Yeah. Coaching again really helps. And we did a LinkedIn Live with Sharon, Creative Desk.
Oh, brilliant. She's
yeah,
great.
Get your members to have a look at our LinkedIn Live with Sharon, Creative Desk, Delegation Without Disaster. We talk about delegation at length and the challenges and kind of some strategies that can help there. But
yeah, that's fantastic. I'll definitely check that out.
It's hard, but we run an empower hour session, like you were saying, being in community, so separate from networking, but one of the main strategies for ADHD is the body double strategy. And so what we've found, a lot of our ADHDers will only do these things that they've been procrastinating on if we kind of get them together in a group or you body double with them and say, okay, what are you doing? And then everyone's doing it. And then at the end, it's always so much less painful than what they ever anticipated. And they're always so surprised. That only took me 5 minutes, you know?
Absolutely. We're also going to be running, aside from the Power later on in beginning of next year, an actual group for entrepreneurs and for business leaders, people in companies, to help them, particularly as a peer-on-peer group, which has in the past been incredibly helpful, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've been running this leadership kind of program for clients, leaders that I've coached, managers and small business owners for 1.5 years. And it's that combination of that, you know, the weekly, there's planning, there's implementation, and there's a monthly mastermind where they kind of come together and they mastermind around any issue that each of them brings. And they're just such a lovely group. You know, they're always kind of willing to introduce, you know, other members to other people to get their businesses growing. And that's what we need. We need community. We need to feel like we belong. It's massively transformational.
Do you ever have any of your members asked anything around having employees with ADHD and any problems with navigating that? Or has it mainly been around people who are managing companies who have ADHD?
Yeah, a mixture actually, Tim. I mean, obviously we are a membership organisation for business owners, so primarily it's been people coming to me with issues, you know, they've been impacting themselves. But yeah, we have had some members approach us about challenges, sort of managing team members with ADHD and ultimately how to get the best out of them, because that's what every, you know, responsible employer wants, isn't it? To help their employee be the best that they can be. And I think some of the challenges we found is there is obviously a scheme called Access to Work that people on this webinar may or may not have come across, which is a government funded programme that is there to provide sort of financial support or access to support to help someone stay in work, essentially. But one of the big challenges with that is there is a huge waiting time. I mean, we're talking sort of months and months, and this has been really challenging for either people who are running a business and need to access support, or someone who's got an employee. So that has been a challenge, and I found that small business owners with staff that they need to support, they don't quite know where to turn to. So you know, if you look at the business support landscape, you know, at best it's a little bit of a patchwork quilt. You know, lots of local authorities do some great things to support business owners, but it's very much potluck what business support is delivered where. And often there isn't anything really through the lens of supporting someone who has ADHD, whether that's an employee or an employer. But that is actually really important, which, you know, obviously you guys know, because, you know, those challenges are different. So, you know, we could talk about some of the legalities that, you know, employers have around supporting employees. But the number one thing is that I'm finding is that business owners, they want to do the right thing, they want to get the best out of their employee, but they just don't know how to access support or what the right thing to do, you know, around training or coaching styles or management styles. And I think that's a challenge, isn't it? Because where on earth do you go to get that support and that tailored support?
Yeah, and that's that's why we're doing things like this, the coaching stuff.
Absolutely.
Trying to raise awareness.
100%. And it's we always say, but it's not necessarily, we never would work at Ascend anyway. It's never about working against the managers or the company, because I think most companies have their employees' best interests at heart. And it's then providing that knowledge and giving that training so they can then support their employees, because at the end of the day, nobody's interested in that turnover or anything like that. It's really stressful.
And it's focusing on, isn't it, the you know, the amazing contribution that someone who has got ADHD, you know, we all have different strengths, you know, different areas that we need to work on, whether you have ADHD or not. And, you know, the role of a manager, and every, you know, employer wants to bring out the best in their team. But I think what I found is just, there's a lack of sort of resources really that are easily available to actually know what direction to take, you know, what training is relevant, how do you deliver that, how do you support and manage someone to make sure that they can be the best employee that they can be.
100%. I mean, that's why we're trying to improve our resources, aren't we?
Yeah.
We have got the Ascend website. There are resources there which are helpful. But also, as you say, there is access to work. Unfortunately, at the moment, as you say, Candy, the waiting list is horrific. But
employers, I mean, nowadays with the recent, are you familiar with the recent tribunal decisions in May?
Yeah, I've sort of come across those.
Yeah, I mean, they really do shift the onus on the employer now to support employees with ADHD. I think I need to look at one of the judgments a bit more closely, but it even looked as if there's that duty to even kind of identify, you know, so if an employee is presenting with specific traits, the employer really should anticipate that's probably ADHD and provide an occupational health assessment. That's definitely something that's come out of the tribunals, that they must provide, organizations must provide an occupational health assessment if someone has come out with ADHD. So there's that one.
Exactly. And you know, it's a protected characteristic, and you know, that means from day one that an employee with ADHD does have a right to adjustments, you know, in the workplace. And I think I know actually, you know, bring it back to the support that we provide. So the legal services, you know, that we provide, we've seen sort of a massive increase in calls and downloads of documentation, because people, you know, there's better awareness that actually there is an onus on you as an employer to make these adjustments. So being able to pick up the phone and speak to an employment lawyer and get dedicated and correct legal advice is really imperative. You know, and that can cover you from obviously a legal aspect, create sort of documents, but what it can't do is then implement the necessary adjustments and training. And that's where, you know, sort of coaching and support is so integral, because, you know, we know the government, you know, has got this big ambitious target of increasing the number of people in work. But actually, we've got to make sure that that experience is positive for both an employer and an employee. And that's, you know, again, where it comes back to coaching, doesn't it? And the right training and support, really.
100%. So if any of your members are interested in how they can best support their employees, or even if any employees do want to get in touch with us, we do offer a free strategy call.
With employers.
With employers, and if you're a manager in that position, we do management training as well.
Well, the thing is, through the ADHD Advocate, we kind of do this one-off awareness training for organizations. Always delighted when HR or manager came out to us wanting that training. But what we saw was that it's kind of that bolt-on kind of support. It's not enough to actually implement the shift that's needed to truly support your ADHD employees. So that's why with Ascend, what we've done, our kind of minimum support is the awareness training, but also manager training for helping the managers see through the lens and better communicate, navigating RSD when providing feedback, and just in terms of giving instructions, all of that. That's so important, because quite often it's usually when the relationship between manager and employee, that's when things start to sour. That's when, you know, it's because once that relationship's broken, you know, that's usually when we see the RSD triggered, and when the mental health problems start surfacing, and the sick leave then starts to be, you know, and then the performance, and so it's so important. And ADHD will do anything for their manager if they feel seen, heard, respected, and are recognized. They're your most loyal, dedicated employees. Honestly, everyone that I've seen in the past in performance management have been the most hardworking, diligent talent. I'm in all seriousness. That's what I've always been so surprised they've landed in performance management, and it's such a waste, like, because they are the most loyal employees. So no one wins. That's why with this approach, you know, and the check-ins that we provide to make sure that things are on track, and, you know, we want to partner with organizations in the same way we partner with our kind of clients that we coach. So taking a coaching approach is the only way that, you know, we can get these kind of outcomes that employees deserve, but also organizations, right? They can really benefit from the competitive advantages that ADHD is operating the areas of strengths will yield. So no, we'd be delighted on, obviously, anyone that it needs help, and FSB as well. You, Candy, anyone in FSB, just pick up the phone to us, have a chat if there's anything you need. Definitely.
Oh, it's really kind. Thanks.
No, honestly. So any last questions?
I think that's about it for now, Candy, if that's all good with you. Thank you so much for your time.
No, that hopefully it's been useful, just sharing some of those sort of common themes that I've seen. And and I know obviously there's going to be some really fantastic content in the rest of the webinar. I'm very conscious it's getting dark so early, isn't it? So hopefully you can see
Halloween as well.
Trick or treating?
Pardon?
Are you going to go
trick or treating? No, we were talking about it earlier. Actually, I'm probably just going to shut my gates and pretend it's not happening. So I'm very
quite right.
Thanks, Candy.
Thank you so much, Candy.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good evening.
We'll speak
soon.
You.
Yeah, bye.
Cheers. Bye. Thank you very much.
So that was, delighted to have had Candy from FSB, and hopefully we can support some of their members.
Absolutely. As we said, if anyone does need any help, if there's any employers out there who feel like giving us a call, feel free. The number is on the website. Well, it's not a number, sorry. There's a booking platform on the website, and you can book your call in there.
Okay.
So feel free to do so.
Yep. And now we're going to be sharing a video. So this space was meant to be the ADCA panel. So hearing from some ADHD coaches. You're still going to be hearing from some ADHD coaches. It'll be me and actually someone on our team, Yvonne Duggan, another one of our ADHD coaches. This was part of our ADHD Awareness Month LinkedIn Lives, Ask an ADHD Coach. So we had a few people asking questions, and so we shared our answers on video. So we're going to play that now for you. At least I'm going to attempt to, because last night was a bit more difficult sharing videos. And then exactly. And then at 5 o'clock, we've got our psychiatrist panel. And so, yeah, you definitely don't want to miss that at 5 o'clock. So, but let's get on to sharing the recording on the Ask an ADHD Coach. So hopefully this will work. Bearing with me. Here we go. Okay. We've got, obviously, up here, Stephanie, founder of Sand ADHD and Empower, and Yvonne Duggan, one of our coaches here, and
Tim, and I'm the business and partnerships
head of sales and engagements and partnerships. Yvonne and I will be answering some of these questions.
Let's start with the first one. This is one from TikTok. Why can't I sleep because of racing thoughts at night?
This affects so many people with ADHD. The default mode network that we have that is, neurotypical brains have an on-off switch. Ours just tends to keep firing away, and we'll keep firing thoughts. And particularly at times where there's things in our mind or stress, but it's also, we're very sensitive. We ADHDers tend to have a slightly different circadian rhythm that really influences our sleep. So there are neurological reasons behind it, which are around circadian rhythm and default mode network, but actually dealing with it is the challenge. And there are many ways to deal with it. And very often people focus on their time before bed. And really, actually, we need to look at phase one of our day. And phase one is actually the morning time of really starting to work with the circadian rhythm. So doing things like getting light, looking at our caffeine, getting exercise. We're booting up our system to adequately for during the day. Looking at caffeine is a big one, and some people love it, some people can't tolerate it, but when you take it can be really important. Obviously, the cutoff time we're aware of, but even when during the morning that we take caffeine will have an influence later on the day. So it's about breaking the day down and looking at that morning time, looking at the afternoon time. Are you having caffeine too late? Have you had exercise? What is going on within that day? And then the evening. What's happening with our brain is going just on full power. And the way to deal with that is often to give our brain something else to do. So even if you wake in the middle of the night, sometimes we've just got to accept that is how our brain works. But to work with that, we can give it something else to do. So that can be having yoga scripts. That can be just accepting it's 3 a.m. in the morning and my brain is shooting off. I've woken up. So what are the things that I can do? That is really looking to those kind of scripts, that breathing, temperature of the room. Are you too hot, too cold? And just building in some patterns and routines. Some people need to read. I have clients who will just say, I need to read, even if it's 3 in the morning, I need to read. My brain is now engaged in something else and I just drift off to sleep. So there are ways of really trying to work through what works, but it's not just looking at sleep in those few hours before of the wind down, the light, the temperature, that giving your body the cues. It starts in the morning.
Have you got anything to add?
Yeah, the racing thoughts, obviously they're there throughout the day. Having ADHD, having that really hungry brain stuff for stimulation, the thoughts are always there. But, from what I've seen, obviously at nighttime, like Yvonne was saying, it's night, you're meant to sleep, it's quiet. There's now no longer that external input coming in. And so the ADHDers can hear them more. And Yvonne was saying, it's about finding an alternative source of stimulation. I've got a lot of clients that will listen. I've got one client that listens to a shipping podcast to try and distract themselves from their own thoughts. And I guess it's so uninteresting to them. However, it distracts them away from the thoughts in their head enough to just give them enough stimulation, but boring enough to go to sleep. A lot of ADHDers, they've just got to substitute. They still need some stimulation, but it's got to be the right level.
And because it's recognizing that default mode network is not turning off, So therefore, it's intentionally directing the attention of your brain somewhere
Yeah.
else.
That's
So
it.
that you can then go, okay, now I can finally drift off to sleep. So it's distraction is one of the keys. And then what that distraction is down to individuals.
Yeah, that definitely.
But
Absolutely.
definitely not turning on your phone with a bright light in the middle of the night. Not one, because it's that circadian rhythm. That's what you need to start working with.
That's too stimulating.
It's just the messages are all wrong. It's now giving the brain the message, oh, we've got to wake up. So we want to keep that melatonin there. We want to get rid of that serotonin. You just don't want to be giving the brain the wrong messages.
It's a real problem for many ADHD.
It's a key feature because it's just those thoughts. And some are really useful. I've had clients who solve the best problems in their sleep. Not quite in their sleep, it's a lighter sleep, and they solve the best things because they have the space to work it through. But if you've got something on your mind, it can be challenging not to get into that rumination zone with it.
I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. A lot of people have that problem with sleeping, that when you're just trying to just get to rest and then they just won't stop. It's very useful to have that advice for a lot of people. So the next question is, this is again from TikTok. What is the scientific explanation behind time blindness? I can't stand when my friends just say leave earlier. It doesn't work, and it's one of my biggest sources of ADHD, shame. So again, it's time blindness. I'm sure a lot of people struggle with that.
From a ADHD coaching perspective and what we've been taught, what we see, ADHD is having that now versus not now type of brain. We just don't really see, a lot of us are very much don't see the future. We're stuck in the past. I've had a lot of clients that ruminate. A certain situation occurs that triggers a memory, and then they're completely stuck in the past, for instance. There's so many distractions that make it really difficult for ADHDers to feel time passing. We are literally time blind. That's why one of the things that's really helpful, like a time, because then it helps the see time. Also, ADHD overlaps with things like dyslexia, probably dyscalculia. And so measurement of time, if it's, say you have to leave the house at 9 o'clock and it's 8:40, I got 20 minutes. And for many ADHDers, I'm one of them. I'm shocking with numbers and measurement, right? I don't know what 20 minutes is. I don't know what 200 miles actually mean. When someone says that's 20 square meters or yeah, that's 200 yards away, I'm like, what do you have to give me something actually that I don't know what you're talking about. So it's not just time blindness. I definitely also put money into that category, at least for my type of ADHD, because of the figures. It's the figure. And I did really well at maths. Maths was one of my best subjects. I've got a finance degree, funnily enough. And yet I'm so figure blind, time blind, and money blind, and things like that. Yeah. Is anything Yvonne, what would you say to that?
I think it's very much part of our nervous system, and just in the same way that we're motivated, it's intrinsically important with time. It's just something we don't feel. We don't feel that same passing of time. And so 5 minutes, as you say, we can't quantify that. It's part of that dopamine. It's part of just how the brain works. So the keys to it really are about creating a visual external measurement of what that would be. And so people work with all kinds of things to do that. As you say, that clock is superb. For many people, actually having a watch is really important. If you have a smartwatch, that can be used to actually have it with you to create alarms, to prod you. So it is very much around starting to sense the time. Also, the way our nervous system works, there's a lot of energy. Once we have a thought, we go with it. So having 5 minutes for an ADHDer, when you don't feel that time, there's this sense of, oh, but I could get this done and that done. And suddenly we spring into that sense of urgency about things, and we can get a lot done, a huge amount done. But that 5 minutes might turn into the idea of I can get the wash out, or I can get this email sent, or I can get all of this filing sorted, whatever it is. But we just don't. The surprise, often I hear clients in this all the time, is just pretty shocked that actually it's not the same time that it was when I looked at my watch the last time. How did 20 minutes go by? I thought this was going to take me 2 minutes. So just that inability to be able to quantify, as you say, and people have that with numbers, people have that with money. So for that person who's asked that question, there is a neurological basis to it, and it's very much steeped in just our energy and how we see how our brain works and how we conceptualize time and numbers. The key is what to do with it, right? It's neurological, it's there. And I can really hear for that person that they're saying, you're turning up late. You don't want to be late for things. You want to be on time. And no matter how much you say, no, I'm going to get out at, we'll say 11:45, and somehow I'm getting out at 11. Why is that? It is very much about trying to create that understanding among people who you are with, who are close to you, particularly within personal circles, that look, I may need a little flexibility on time. That's not saying I can be 30 minutes late all the time, because you got to respect other people's time. But what you can do is that there's a little leeway. You can expect me to be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And is that okay with you? Then to make sure that there are work occasions where you can't be late. You just can't. And very often people don't have as much problems with those because there's
Stakes higher, stakes the
yes,
higher.
it's much higher. So very often people with work are never late
Because of the
it's
stakes.
social.
When we have choice, we tend to self-sabotage. We make the wrong choices, but remove the choice in terms of the stakes. Either you miss out on something or the consequence is something that's going to be quite brutal, significant. We tend to get out of our own way easier in that respect. There's less choice, less wiggle room. But it's like you said, it's so important to position, to accept that this is a challenge, to position to people so that they don't get the wrong idea, that they understand it's not because you don't want to be there, that it's a matter of can't versus want. This is really difficult for me. And, you know, even leading into interdependence, and maybe can you come and drag me out of the house? I've had to say to people, I'm pretty bad on this, the time blindness. And I understand what she means by source of shame, because it's not my intention at all to offend anyone or cause inconvenience to anyone. That's horrifying to feel that we were the ones that caused any kind of inconvenience or offended someone. But it's just in the moment, like you said, that time blindness, you don't even think about that in the moment, particularly if you're being distracted or falling down a rabbit hole in that time and say, oh God.
To actually, oh, I do have time, I can do this, but we don't know what that time is. And that's part of our nervous system. It's just that we're impulsive to do things, which that not understanding time can be fabulous in many circumstances. So looking into hyperfocus of where you just zoom right in and now what you can accomplish is enormous. I think the strategies that I work with clients on is really starting to see your day. Because what very often happens is that people start in the morning and they're drifting through the day. They have a sense of, oh, I think I have an 11 o'clock and I've got a 2 o'clock and I've got whatever, the dental appointment, but they're conceptual in their head. So as you say, it's that interdependent, getting it external. So really in the morning of building in some kind of practice to have a visual of what your day looks like. Then structuring, okay, so what is it I'm going to need? So being intentional. What am I going to need to make sure I get out of the office, house, wherever it is, by 10:30 because I need to be there at 11? What do I need to do? So work backwards. Don't wait till 10:30. 10 o'clock is when you need to start planning that and working that through. What alarms can you give? What distractions can you get rid of? It's about being intentional. And then giving a little bit. If we hold ourselves too rigid, we reject that as well. There is getting that understanding where we can get it from people around us is also important. So there's definitely things we can do. Timers, alarms, endless alarms. Our house, endless alarms are going off all the time for each individual to get out the door, to the point it's really irritating, but it works. It really works. Don't wait till the time to start figuring out how do I get out of here on time. That's got to be a view early in the day, what's going on, and then how do you set yourself up to make that happen?
And it's never just, because I heard you said when my friends say just leave earlier, whenever there's a just, you hear yourself say just, or so, it's never just for us. That is like the red flag. Oh, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's never just, because actually that's the term that's used. And I've done it myself, of where you have that spare 5 minutes. I'm just going to
nip out.
Yeah. Well, actually, that needs to, if we could just get some sort of shock where you say, I just.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Don't worry.
Hang on.
That's the term I used to hate.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is.
Right.
I love that. I love that. That's definitely that is a warning sign. I've never thought of
'Cause it's
myself in that
minimizing.
way, but I will now.
Yeah.
Good.
I think the alarms is always a great idea. I always set constant light, but and try and make it half an hour before, just before something, not.
It's the prep. You gotta prep to be where you need to be in advance of where you need to be there.
Just getting clothes ready can be quite useful. You're not in the morning deciding I'm going to wear this, or something's not ready.
You have a massive meltdown because of the virus steam. You think you're gonna look crap, and then the whole day crap. Yeah, there is so much.
It's also removing decisions, right?
Yeah.
So removing as many of the decisions as you can from that time. And that's very much what coaching, that is what we do, is we actually work that through, work backwards and see where somebody is actually getting tripped up. And you're right, it can be down to making decisions at that time. What will I wear, or how will I get there, or who's coming, or what else do I need to do on the way? That's a lethal one. I'll just drop this off.
Suddenly I've got to make a decision, or maybe I should just do that on the way. And that can be a disaster. And the next question we have, are there any supplements that you have found that help ADHD symptoms?
I have worked with a fabulous person who is it's a new area, which is physiological neuroimmunology. There is a mouthful. The conversations I've had with him, and I've done this and I've found it really great. Obviously, everybody has got to work with their own GP based on what's going on for themselves. But there certainly are ones that we know are good. Magnesium, there's different types of magnesium. So there's magnesium that's good for sleep, magnesium that's good for calming the nervous system. We know that vitamin Bs, particularly for women, so B complexes are superb. Vitamin D, these are the kind of combinations of supplements that are excellent. There's a whole host, there's so much more research going on around this area, but they would certainly be ones that there's been a lot of work on that we know are really good in terms of nervous system, because ADHD is not just about distraction. It's not just about impulsivity. We now know, or emotional regulation, enormous part. It's a whole system. It's a nervous system. So getting cortisol levels down is so important, and we run on them. We run on this steam of cortisol all the time and adrenaline, right? And so we're in that sympathetic nervous system. We want to be over in the parasympathetic, and that's what the likes of some of those supplements really help to settle inflammation within our system. There's loads of work around turmeric and how really great that is at just because it can be around inflammation as well, because when you're in that heightened state, that's what your body is doing. So there's a lot of work being done in that area. There's a lot of knowledge now in that area that's now being applied to the likes of ADHD, and it's definitely something to start reading about and exploring, because it most definitely can help. Just to reiterate that it's individual for everybody. So I'm not telling everybody to go off and get on magnesium. You need to do that and know your own things that are going on and discuss that with a GP or a nutritionist.
Yeah, because another one I think you might hear recommendations for on social media, etc. If you take this or that, it's going to help you with ADHD. And always, as you say, be very careful.
Yeah, there's very little research, to be honest, on ADHD specifically with supplements. We do know that in general population, magnesium is good for calming and for nervous system. There's certain things we do know. Specifically for ADHD, there's less work done on that, but it's improving. And it's not just supplements, it's anything that's helping that parasympathetic nervous system. So moving out of that fight flight, which is the sympathetic system, getting it across. That is what's actually going to have a huge influence on hormones, on what's going on, what's flowing around in our body. And that impacts our impulsivity. That impacts our executive function. So supplements, yeah, but you also need to look to other things to reduce that state or the amount of time spent in that state of sympathetic nervous system.
Okay, that's fascinating. Let's go work specific, and let's go with When you're going for a job interview,
Oh.
should you disclose your ADHD diagnosis? It's probably a very important one for people.
What would you say, Ron? It's a situation in different industries. Doing
Yeah,
different.
it's obviously a very personal decision to decide to or not. You really have to have at the base of any disclosure for anything is psychological safety. And so how much do you trust the people that you are giving this information to, that they have the understanding of what ADHD is, that they will not even have an unconscious bias towards it? And so they may say, talk the talk, but unconsciously they can have bias and think you're going to be late, you're going to be disorganized, you're not going to be able to do this stuff. How can you do great things? Right. And there's that disconnect. So I personally, and in the people that I have coached, I'd be careful. I'd be very careful. You need to know you have psychological safety there.
ADHD awareness has grown, but unfortunately, from obviously this answer and the same answer I would have given to Yvonne, we're just not there yet, unfortunately. We still need to raise ADHD awareness is still so much needed because it is still sorely lacking. The stigma, the myths around it. And then now with those recent tribunal decisions requiring employers to step up to be able to anticipate, really identify ADHD as within the workplace, get occupational health assessments and get the awareness training in place and the coaching. Yeah, like in this kind of environment, it's probably, I wouldn't blame ADHDers that, like you said, don't really know that organization, the employer, level of ADHD knowledge for not,
It's unconscious bias very often that would be the issue. The most important part, really, the most important person to understand ADHD is themselves, is the ADHDer. Because when you understand your ADHD and you have that awareness and that acceptance around it and know the strategies that work for you, then you can navigate other people and their lack of awareness, and you can do it from a place of strength and safety within yourself. That's the most important. Not great that you could share it and everybody else will know. You just don't know what, how people will manage that. So start with yourself for me.
And there are still ways, like we've had obviously clients that have been in performance management that have left organizations that haven't been very ADHD friendly, catered to their needs. And when we help them, which we do in coaching, helping them prepare for interviews for new job roles, because Yvonne was saying, it's so important that they understand their ADHD the most, because it's only then that they can work out, hang on, in this new job, I'm going to need these things in place. And so they don't have to frame it as ADHD. They can just say to the employer or ask questions that will help give them the confirmation that, certain barriers that maybe were in the way at the last job won't be a problem in this job. So there's still ways of being able to set yourself up to success.
I think it's also important to distinguish here, because I think the question was, if you're going for a job, do you disclose?
Yeah, if you're going for a job interview.
Yeah, when going for the job interview.
Okay.
I think
So yes,
you
so that is going for the job interview. So there I would be phenomenally careful. And that is not to say, and not to confuse that with when you are already in a job and you can already assess that psychological safety. We all work with many clients where they're supported by their work for coaching, and they have disclosed and disclosed very successfully and have got the compassion and the understanding that they need. So there are plenty of scenarios where you do disclose. Just would you do it at the beginning for a job interview? I don't think there's a need. What you want to disclose at that interview are your strengths. And those strengths are, so many of them will come from a place of ADHD. And we will move to a place, if we look at dyslexia on LinkedIn, dyslexic thinking, it's now a skill, right?
Yeah.
So the same type of traits. That's what people are looking for. So don't be afraid to put them forward. And if it is then in the question, or do you have ADHD? I'm hearing these, then you're sitting with somebody who actually understands ADHD and know you're in a better place then. But there's great strengths, so put them forward. Don't worry about, don't be putting forward what might be weaknesses or perceived as weaknesses. That's not what you're there to get a job.
Like I say to my clients, it's you interviewing them too. It's not just you being interviewed, you're interviewing them. You want to make sure that this is going to be the right place for you. And given past experiences, given ADHD needs and barriers, it's a great opportunity for them to seek to understand and then be understood. Lead with that coaching approach to get curious, to see the picture before navigating that territory. You want to be able to see the picture. I think we're on the same page in terms of seek to understand, put forward your strengths, but be able to find out whether it is the place for you, really.
100%.
That's the key.
100%, absolutely. On the side of caution, especially if you don't know them, then it could be a very risky business to do. Be curious, as you say. Do we have time for one more question around ADHD at work?
Yeah.
One which I think I'm sure a lot of people who have ADHD and are interested in how coaching would help them at work. So what are the ADHD coaching methods would you advise for people who are struggling with workplace burnout?
Burnouts, yeah. ADHD coaching methods effective in tackling burnout. Yes, definitely. What would you say to that, Yvonne, in terms of that question?
I think the first is recognizing in yourself that is where you are and acknowledging it and not just keep pushing through, because that's what's brought that person to burnout in the first place. So that's the first thing, acknowledging it, sharing that conversation with somebody, I think is really important, so that it's acknowledged externally outside of yourself. And then it's very individual for each person, right? Because it depends on how that burnout is exhibiting and at what degree of burnout that they're at. But there's definitely, if it is at a place where you can continue to work, can you share this with your employer? Do you need to get medical support, first of all, so that to be able to take time off, so going to GP, or is it something you're able to navigate internally? Is there flexibility with working from home? What are the things you need to try to alleviate this so that you can continue working? And so understanding what they are, and again, going back, as you said, stuff around interdependence and externalizing, write it down, get it out, what it is that you feel you need. Work that through with somebody for what are the things, and then identify who can you discuss that internally within the organization of where you will get that support. And then it's sometimes coaching is required to help identify those things of what they are. Really, the Holy Grail is avoiding the burnout, because is understanding your needs, your boundaries, how to stop saying yes. It's okay to saying no is saying yes to you. You have to say yes to everybody. How to do that, how to navigate that.
And this is the coaching methods. What Yvonne has just described there, they are the ADHD coaching methods. That is what we do with individuals in the workplace that either at risk of burnout, or they're between their phases, or they're still in the burnout. It's, again, getting them to pause, power of the pause, which ADCA teaches us to pause, to process what's actually going on, like you said, because a lot of ADHD is just push. We just push through. We're always fine. You ask an ADHD, like a lot of my clients that do suffer from burnout, when you ask them how they are, invariably you get, yeah, fine, everything's fine, because that's what we tell ourselves to keep going. Because we don't pause, because we pause to process how we really feel and how overwhelmed we are. The fear is, if I admit this, then
I've got to face it. So much of it is I'm fine, and they're answering from up here. Actually, physically, what's going on, and making that connection between body, mind, and body. And so often the answers are already sitting in your body as to what you're feeling and where it's at. It won't be, what's the body holds score, right? The body is going to tell you, it'll catch up. So you've got to acknowledge it.
Yeah, and that's what we do in coaching. It's providing that safe, non-judgmental space, and also it's that opportunity for them to check in. And importantly, through the ADHD lens, we normalize it. It's not like this, because usually the rejection sensitivity, right? It's like there must be something wrong with me. But once they realize as well that, no, you're the workaholic style ADHD, this is something that all of us face. This is not unusual. And it's more of a matter of accepting that. And like you were saying, Yvonne, those coaching methods, being able to learn your limits, how to manage your energy, but importantly, how to set boundaries, communicate boundaries to manage. Yvonne, you did that LinkedIn Live on managing your energy, didn't you?
Yeah.
Guys, they have a watch of that recording that Yvonne did on managing energy on this point in particular. Coaching is fantastic for helping on that level.
Yeah, because burnout is energy management, and that's what you do with it. Yeah.
Not easy.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people will relate to that. And I think also it's got to be made clear, but it's not just employees, there'll be managers as well who struggle massively with that, with the delegation.
Massively, massively. We see it, and we see it so much as well with entrepreneurs, that because that passion takes hold and they just relentless and keep going and going. It's very evident, not just at employee level, it's at manager, at leadership, at entrepreneurial level, right through. But it's really gaining that really deep understanding of yourself and accepting that, as you said, Stephanie, it's normal, but it's accepting that you're normal, that what's normal for an ADHD brain is perfectly fine.
Yeah, no shame.
Knowing how to work with it. It's just, that's all it is. It's knowing how to work with it. And that's where people get tripped up. They just don't know how to work with it.
Workday coaching definitely comes
Hugely.
that to help you get out of your own way. We can do things for others we can't do for ourselves.
Thank you so much, Yvonne.
Thanks to those sent in the questions there.
We've got all the recording of the LinkedIn Lives across the last 4 weeks, including Yvonne's one she did on managing energy. So do go and have a look for that one on the Send ADHD LinkedIn. It's also on the YouTube for Send ADHD and Empower ADHD as well, if you want to watch any of those recordings. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, see you later.
Yay, bye.
Okay, so hopefully you found that helpful. And now we've got our panel of psychiatrists. So these are psychiatrists that we've partnered with. And so we've got Dr. Filippo Bassetti, Dr. Amber Sadiq, Dr. Mace Farron, and Dr. Jack Christoflek. So here we go. Yes, please come. I can ask you to unmute and turn. Yep, perfect. So unmute. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good to see you all.
Hello.
Oh.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. I think Filippo is still unfortunately muted.
There we go.
Are we still all?
Hang on.
Yeah,
There we go.
We're all good.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much for coming in,
It's gonna be
guys.
so helpful to have all of your perspectives tonight. So Tim, over to you with the questions.
Well, good evening, everyone. I think it would be great to start if you could just introduce yourselves and maybe tell us a little about your areas of expertise, and then we can just start with the questions after that. So if we could start with the order on the screen. So if we could start with you, Filippo, is that okay?
Yes, of course. So my name is Filippo Passetti. I'm a consultant psychiatrist. I'm a general adult psychiatrist. Wouldn't describe myself as an ADHD expert in particular, but this is quite a substantial chunk of what I do on, it's my bread and butter.
Okay.
General adult psychiatrist.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Filippo. And if we go to Amber, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi there. Happy Halloween to everyone. So I'm Amber Sadiq. I'm a consultant psychiatrist, but I specialize in children and families. And I work in the NHS, but I also work in private practice where I run a clinic where we very much look at kind of family mental health and neurodivergence. And so it's a real passion of mine to be here actually and talking about ADHD. So thanks for asking me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. And if we could go to Mate next, is that okay?
Hi, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. So my name is Maite Ferrin. I'm consultant adult psychiatrist and child and adolescent psychiatrist. And I've been working on the ADHD field for more than 20 years now. I work in the NHS. I also work privately. And I do research on ADHD. I've been part of the European Guidelines Group for over, almost 20 years now. So very excited to participate in this webinar tonight.
Thank you so much. It's excellent to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Jack, if you could just quickly introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hello. My name is Jack Christoflek. I'm based in Jersey, Channel Islands. So I run private practice here, mostly ADHD related. Also do a TMS for the depressed patients. I've been in private practice altogether. I lived in South Africa for a long time and had a private practice there as well, as a general adult psychiatrist. So thank you very much for inviting me to this panel.
It's a pleasure to have you too, Jack. So if we start off today's webinar, we've as it's mostly going to be addressing adult ADHD and ADHD in the workplace, but there will be some more general questions as well. So the first question is, I'm sure something you've all dealt with recently is a rise in adult diagnosis. Is this something you've noticed very much yourselves? If I could go first to Dr. Felipe, please.
Or whoever wants to answer as
Whoever
well.
wants
Yeah,
to,
because
so, yeah,
there's
absolutely.
a lot
Yeah,
of questions.
there will be a huge amount.
Yeah,
of
whoever
to
would
that.
like to answer the
Whoever likes
questions,
going
go
on
for
out
it.
there,
Yeah.
Yes, the short answer is yes. I think my colleagues on the panel, I think will all agree. And I think it's a combination of a number of factors. So there's certainly a greater awareness, as your question suggested. But there are other factors too. So firstly, there is a more and more pressure on everyone to process more and more information on a day-to-day basis. And also since COVID, there is also more pressure on our capacity to organize our time. So I certainly have noticed for the first time this expansion in requests of assessments for ADHD when we all started to work from home, and suddenly there was no queuing the start and the end of the day, and people were required to do this themselves, to do this internally rather than having it as an external imposed routine. The final point that I think is still being debated is how the emphasis on working with screens and all these apps and other things that are competing for our attention all the time might have affected us. I think the question is still debated, and we'll probably know more precisely the answers to that question in a few years. But I think it's fair to say that we are all now, for the past 5 or 10 years, we have been part of a global experiment to which none of us has consented.
This is I totally, absolutely agree there. I'd absolutely agree there. Is there anything anyone else like to add on the rise of adult ADHD diagnosis?
I mean, I can jump in just because I work with children and families. So,
Yeah.
you know, for many years, we saw ADHD as a kind of childhood neurotype condition that, you know, in CAM services for many years, we were seeing lots of children, families where, you know, the child was kind of very hyperactive or impulsive, and we would assess and we would diagnose. And that's, I suppose, the kind of very stereotyped way of seeing ADHD. And as Filippo said, you know, we've kind of expanded our awareness over the years. In kind of the 2000s and with DSM-5, you know, we're really recognizing that adults have ADHD as well. Those children go on to become adults. And, you know, 2/3 or a little bit more than that still have symptoms which impact them. So I think that's really interesting, because we've ended up seeing adults struggling with anxiety, perfectionism, burnout, not coping with structures within the workplace. You know, if we're really thinking about kind of workplaces, and then kind of thinking, actually, why are we feeling like this? And I think with that awareness then comes the question around, well, could I have ADHD, or could there be something else going on? And I think we now we're not there yet, but there's more permission to seek that information, to have those assessments, which I think is quite helpful.
100%, absolutely. Well, one of the things I've always thought odd is that, as you say, in the past, ADHD was considered to be almost a children's condition, but I have no idea how it was ever thought that condition would simply go away. It would seem odd, but if it is a neurological condition, then it would never be suspected to just disappear.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think so. Sorry.
Sorry, carry on, sir.
Yeah. I think it's that focus on the neurological, isn't it? And it's the focus on actually. I think historically ADHD has been kind of clumped in with other mental health diagnoses.
Oh, right, okay.
And I think we're now developing, and got colleagues here who I'm sure will talk to this, just developing more of an understanding around the neurobiology behind ADHD and the overlaps between ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions as well, which I think is, again, what a shift in our knowledge and understanding, just over a short period of time.
Absolutely. Is there anything?
I think Jack's.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, despite all this awareness, we still have a massive disparity between recognition in children and adults, and there's still massive number of adults that are either undiagnosed, and even if they diagnose, they reluctantly treated or not treated. And on the point where the ADHD in adults hasn't been recognized in the UK, I think until 2005, as you said, so you have a whole massive group of medical professionals like GPs and specialists who are not aware of or have not been trained during their training on ADHD, so they're quite reluctant to recognize it, and there's a certain degree of resistance to accept the need for treatment. But nevertheless, there is certainly a greater recognition. I think I just attended another conference before this, and there was a paper saying that there has been a raise of 18% of prescriptions for ADHD since COVID. So certainly COVID has made a difference.
Yes, it made a massive difference.
So definitely there's much more recognition there. Yeah.
It's fascinating that you were saying, Amber, but it did seem in the past that it was seen as a mental health condition, which seems as an odd way to perceive ADHD, but it's good. It's interesting that the shift has changed that.
Yeah, we're definitely, I think, just understanding a lot more. There's still so much about the brain and the mind and the body that we don't understand. And I think even the connection between neurodevelopmental conditions, neurotypes, and then physical manifestations of neurodivergence, kind of the bendy bodies that, Jessica Eccles is looking at. And, I think there's still, where we are right now, if we were to have this conversation in 5 years or 10 years, I think we'll be having a very different conversation, but I think it's a good start, isn't it?
Absolutely. And Filippo, you.
Yes. So you were asking how come people thought that this would suddenly disappear?
Yeah.
Well, the idea was that this was a disorder caused by a delayed maturation of the frontal lobes, and this would happen at some point, and most people would recover. And some of it is definitely true, because not everyone who has childhood ADHD goes on to have adult ADHD. We have to recognize that. But the other reason why I think there are these issues with the recognition of the meaning of the diagnosis and the acceptance of having this problem is a misunderstanding. It's more subtle, and it's about the meaning of diagnosis in psychiatry. In fact, for across specialties, really, but particularly in psychiatry. So in psychiatry, a diagnosis is a model. So it's a way of predicting something. For example, comorbidity or response to medication. It's not a real thing. Everyone who, if you take 100 people who have ADHD, there are probably 100 different history and combinations of genetic, developmental factors and environmental factors, and you can't. It's a simplification to say that they all have ADHD. It is, as I said, a tool. It's a model. It's a way of predicting things Otherwise, a model is not a model; it's just a description, and it's completely useless.
Okay.
Next.
Mate Farron, you have
yeah.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to add on what my colleagues are saying. As adult psychiatrist, I used to see my own colleagues diagnosing people with depression, with other mental health disorders or conditions that were apparently more serious or severe. And then they were diagnosing these people, as I call it, transversally or transactionally, not instead of longitudinally. Okay, so they were saying, well, this person has bipolar disorder, this person has depression or anxiety, and that was it. And some of them would struggle to try and find out the reasons why this adult would end up in having this depression. And so I think then when I converted into child and adolescent psychiatrist, I could see, some adult psychiatrists are missing the whole kind of neurodevelopmental and the whole history from childhood to adulthood. And it's such an important thing. They don't, and I think that was the issue of why previously ADHD in adults wasn't properly recognized and properly. And I think probably adult psychiatrists are now more able to see the importance of the early years. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to say is like a month ago, I was in a conference, and a colleague of mine from Germany, he said something that was very, for me, that was very, how to say, revealed the whole kind of picture of ADHD, which I think he said ADHD is a chronic or might be a chronic condition with which is waxing and waning, and it's getting worse when the situation and the circumstances are worse in terms of more difficulties, more challenging times, is when the symptoms get worse or get more visible, right? And we know that also about ADHD in women and how hormones are playing this very important role, okay? So I think it's about considering ADHD as a longitudinal thing, and then considering its symptoms shaping and becoming more or less important depending on how challenging the situation is.
Yeah, that aligns with the ADCA. David Gewerk spoke yesterday, and very much always, emphasizing, ADHD, it's situationally variable, like exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So did you want to?
I mean, I was only going to ask from probably more than an outsider's perspective. What is from a profession of psychiatry? How would you define ADHD? What would your clinical definition be?
So DSM-5.
Would it be that definition, or is there?
I think psychiatrists, you've obviously to assess, you follow, there's the DSM-5, there's a European version.
Yes, we would, but this just serves for or helps with common understanding and communication between us. And unfortunately, that's a requirement to justify treatment in many ways. And when patients are transferred, you need that sort of communication tool and common language to really to communicate that. But it's by all means it's man-made. Like Filippo said, it's a concept, it's a construct, it's man-made construct, and it is fluid, it changes. So your DSM criteria, DSM-3 or so, might have been, they were different to what they are now. So, and we recognize the different aspects of ADHD and different presentation, and probably in the future we will probably include more symptoms into the diagnosis. So it is a bit rigid in some ways, but I think it depends on expertise where you can include all those other symptoms and nuances that patients present with, and then create a picture. So it's not so much more about diagnosis on one side. It's more about understanding the symptoms that person struggles with and they cause impairment of function, and then try to help them with the symptoms, because ultimately we treat symptoms, we don't treat the diagnosis. So, if somebody has more problems with hyperactivity or impulsivity, then we focus on that rather than or emotional dysregulation in the course of ADHD, then there will be a focus on that in terms of treatment, rather than necessarily just all the three sort of DSM major criteria for ADHD.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's always interesting to know, because I think a lot of people might be interested to know from that clinical perspective what that definition is. Maite, did you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, just to follow on what Jack is saying. So we as psychiatrists, we have to follow DSM-5 criteria. We cannot.
I'm sorry, Maite, you've just frozen there.
The young person or the adult need that treatment, right?
Yeah.
However, I think there's a tendency to overfocus on DSM criteria too much, and at times we're just like a bit obsessed with ticking the boxes of the DSM-4. DSM-5, and DSM-5 is just a guide, and we have to read between the lines, read the symptoms, why the symptoms show like that. I think it's more about just ticking.
As Amber, is there anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I'll keep it really brief because I know we've got lots of questions.
Yeah.
I think it really does come down, and I think, Jack and Maite have kind of, alluded to this. It is around really strong clinical assessment. It's about that human assessment, about really trying to understand the different kind of aspects of that human being's presentation, the intersectional bits, because ADHD does change, like we've heard, over time. If we look at it kind of developmentally, a 6-year-old with ADHD versus a 12-year-old versus an 18-year-old versus a 40-year-old, and in that, gender plays a part, hormones, other life stressors. So it's about really, I do have a bit of a challenge with these kind of tick box assessments, I must say. But then again, we have such a huge challenge on our hands because there's many people who are not diagnosed and not receiving the support, especially in the workplace and in their life. So it's about finding that balance, isn't it? But DSM-5, yes, we do follow that, but it is really about having the expertise and the sensitivity around being able to conduct a very human assessment and not just the label, really thinking, what's the formulation here? What's the story here? How is this person going to understand who they are? Are they going to benefit from this? As doctors, our whole thing is about doing no harm. So it's actually about benefiting that human being in front of us with that assessment process.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's, it's very encouraging to hear.
Absolutely.
And that's why you're our referral partner psychiatrist. Exactly that. Yeah.
I mean, going on to the workplace, when you encounter clients or patients who are struggling in the workplace and they have ADHD, what are the common struggles you encounter there? Is anyone who'd like to start off with that question?
Yeah, at what point do they come to you at? I mean, I kind of know the answer to this, but yeah, what point do you see them?
I think this is coming up in the questions, but I think the most common presentation is some form of burnout, stroke, other stress-related disorder, with this depression or generalized anxiety disorder or panic disorder. There are many reasons why people with ADHD might find themselves in those predicaments. People who are familiar with those descriptions of masking, which is not a psychiatric term, but I think it describes very well that propensity of many people who have these difficulties to try and pretend that this is not happening, or assume that this is about their laziness and incapacity to get the job done. But at some point, all these comes to takes a psychological toll, and at some point all this comes to a head.
Absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to add from step coaching?
Yeah. Do you find that, so would you say most of the people that you see, they kind of come to you before they've kind of gone on sick leave? Like, how often do you maybe have to actually encourage these ADHDers to stop and, you know, take a break? Because, yeah, I'll be really interested actually in that answer. How often do you have to encourage them to stop and take care of themselves?
Oh,
Sorry, I thought you were
you're on mute. Just so you're aware, I have actually skipped a couple
Yeah,
of
sorry, we
questions
skipped a
because
few
we've got
time.
Well,
we've got
that's
the time issue. So we're just, if we do get the chance, we'll come back to them. So we've just gone on to the workplace questions now.
Hang on, Jack, was there something?
Yeah, so I think you know, obviously one way of escaping the pressure and burnout would be taking a sick leave and you know, but that often doesn't really help, because then they are in a very unstructured environment at home and mopping around and not knowing what to do with themselves. So I generally wouldn't really advise it unless it's absolutely necessary. I think often patients come with the awareness already. I think you've got a history usually of patients who change jobs frequently, and eventually they become aware of the fact that they come to a certain point in their career and suddenly there's a change of career, or they resign, or they're being fired and they have to start again. Usually there's some kind of conflict at work, you know, usually interpersonal with the supervisor or the colleagues, and they struggle with their work environment. They struggle with being hypersensitive. There's often sensitivity to noise or work environment, and with current recognition in general population, I think the patients start looking for reasons why they underachieve. So my patients come often not necessarily in crisis. They come more because they've been through crises one after the other, and then are looking for answers. So and that's probably majority of my patients, you know, that present with that. But there are definitely problems with underperformance, imposter syndrome, feeling guilty about not performing, and it's not only at work. You know, it's the same thing happens at home. So they kind of failing and struggling throughout, and of course. If they have a very good awareness of what's going on, then that has emotional impact on their well-being. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Amber. If there's something you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting because I see the other side because I work with kind of in my private practice, kind of high performing families. That's what I call them. And I come from a very neurospicy family myself. And so I can really kind of see, you know, in my patients, I'm like, wow, you're working extra hard here. And there is really that risk of burnout. You know, I'm really kind of seeing it in these very professional parents, professional adults, almost like, you know, that masking, the hyper maskers. I know this isn't a very psychiatric term, but from what sorry colleagues, but you know, it's those people that are kind of, you know, really, I think that feel very ashamed of the fact that they do struggle with, you know, executive functioning difficulties, task initiation, completion, task blindness. They know that there's a challenge there. They haven't quite got a word for it. They've maybe been told that they're lazy or they're not working hard enough. Then they've overcompensated for that, or they've put some strategies in place. Because often they're very bright. You know, a lot of the people that I see in private practice, the families are very, very bright. But then when I see the kids, or I see the kind of older siblings or the young adults, the parents then are like, oh, actually, hold on a minute. That, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And this is a highly heritable neurotype, right? So then the parents, the adults are thinking, actually, wait a minute, this is us and we're burning out, or we're struggling, or we're hyper performing. And so it's really interesting, you know, just listening to Jack and thinking, I probably see some of those families just before the adults, just before they kind of hit that burnout as well.
Filippo.
Yes, so it occurs to me another factor is blaming something else that you have come to recognize as a factor. And a case in point is women particularly, who are particularly sensitive to the changes in sex hormones around menses. They've come to recognize that around those times they are more likely to crumble psychologically, to crumble under pressure. And of course, that is a factor, but it's coming on top of something else that is underneath, and it's running throughout their life, not just at those phases.
That's why we do have a lot of women that come to ADHD coaching. It's that late diagnosis. So perimenopause, menopause, when they realize, hang on. Yeah.
What are the what do you recommend when you have a client who is struggling at work? What's your general recommendations for them? I mean, obviously it works on a case by case basis, but what would you recommend them to do, or how to cope?
So I must say I tend not to suggest an ADHD assessment in someone who has clear depressive symptoms or symptoms of a generalized anxiety disorder until that is under control. And this is because or an addictive disorder, for example. That's another area in which this comes a lot. Because I think there are reciprocal confounds. So an assessment can be confounded by those elements being present, but also I don't want them to lose track of the other issue. Take for example addiction. I want them to first look at the mechanisms, the antecedents of their addictive behavior before they start focusing on these other problems, which are longer term.
Is there anything anyone else wanted to add to if they have the client who has ADHD, what the general approach if they are struggling in the workplaces?
I think from my point of view, working with adults who are within a kind of family context, and we do see adults for assessments as well, I think the self-disclosure part's really personal. As to whether people want to disclose in a workplace, that's really, really challenging. And I think I read a number that's about 78% of people with ADHD do not disclose within a workplace in the UK. And I thought that's quite high, but not surprising. So if someone you think, that you see doesn't have a diagnosis, I think just knowing that there might be some impairments or challenges there where they can put some reasonable adjustments in place. And sometimes it's putting them in yourself, or if you don't want to kind of say that you've got the diagnosis, but actually if you know that you're somebody that works better in a certain environment, or working from home, or wearing headphones because you're sensitive to noise. I think when you know yourself, you start to put some systems in place for yourself, which can be really, really helpful. If you've got a diagnosis, then really it's about, do you want to disclose or not, around that, and what support are you going to get in your workplace? Is your workplace somewhere that you feel safe to disclose in? Do you have a really supportive supervisor? So when I work in my NHS context, I've had many doctors who have come in and said, we have XYZ, we have this challenge. And it's really about then, maybe thinking about health passport, thinking about access to work. So I think there's lots of things that we can share with our patients, which we do. Then it's up to the patient, that human being, to then make an informed decision around what they want to do with it. But I think one of the best things, other than, I think medication can be so helpful and unfortunately not accessible to everyone, through the NHS right to choose or through other private providers. I think coaching and just knowing yourself. And there's so much valuable information there. I think there's almost too much noise. So it is about being able to identify, for me as a psychiatrist, saying, have you looked at this website? Here are some really great podcasts to listen to. have you read this book on ADHD coaching strategies? You know, using your website, for example, as you know, and I often refer people to your website and say, look, have a look at the YouTube channel. There's some fantastic resources on there, because some of the strategies are so simple, aren't they? Like body doubling, accountability partners. It's like little things that can actually really help that human being in the workplace.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to?
Yeah, no, we always say, anything that an ADHD is struggling to do, put a body at the end of it, you know, because we can do things for others we can't do for ourselves to help them get out of their own way. Yeah, ADHD coaching is fantastic for that. And as you said, everyone's unique though. What we've found, and like you said, ADHD is usually they love to learn and they overwhelm themselves with information, right? Or they'll read something and the light bulb will go off and, oh my God, that will change my life, everything. Then they get distracted, outside of mind, it's gone. You know, it's really, and that's so frustrating for them. So I think, for them getting to understand their own unique brand of ADHD and accepting their specific needs, that's something that the education, reading about, it's not going to get them there like a coaching would, for instance, in terms of how that process really kind of helps them have that evidence, unique to them that, oh yeah, this is what I do. Oh yeah, this is something that's always going to happen. Oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to adjust that person's expectations and say to them, look, if you want that thing done, I would do it like this, or, get such and such to do it, because it's just not my wheelhouse. So I just tend to not prioritize these things. It's about that adjusting expectations that we've found as coaches, it makes all the difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there anything anyone else wanted to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think just the educational part of it is quite important. The validation itself, it's so incredibly important. When patients receive the diagnosis and it validates what they always thought there was something going on, they couldn't put a finger on it, and now they know what it is. So that in itself helps a lot, and it then enables them to access other help. So they either will then choose to talk to their employers. I generally send an adjustment letter for work, so if they want to present it to HR, to their employer, that helps. I agree, not many people really want to disclose it. It probably depends very much on their relationship with their employer. Access to work scheme, I think that works very well, and they can access funding for coaching, and that usually is what I advise. So there are avenues, but I think education part, just a psychoeducation, and know what's going on actually, and resources on web which are available are extremely valuable. And then the lifestyle change that comes with it as well. We're a little bit rusty. We're not really trained to advise those sort of strategies, but like exercise, we know that helps. Microbiome is important. Eating, maybe fasting, maybe temperature. The cold dips and saunas and that sort of thing. All those things actually come together. They're quite important, and one needs a kind of more holistic approach to advice. And because we train the way we trained, we're all kind of in little compartments, and we experts in one field but don't know much about the other. And all of those are really quite important to manage those patients and help them.
I think it's fascinating that you mentioned a holistic approach, because as you say, different parts, different approaches have their own place to play, like therapy, like the coaching, and obviously psychiatry itself all have a role to play.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to add to that, Stephanie?
Oh, we interviewed a therapist we work with, Ruth Dine. So that, if you haven't seen that, that's a really interesting one to watch as well, in terms of the therapy, for ADHDs and how that plays with the coaching, and then obviously the psychiatry but yeah, it's that whole team around the ADHD that's needed, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And just going back to something you mentioned, Filippo, you mentioned, so if someone does come to you, say with a depression, or say they an addictive disorder.
I realize I didn't finish the thought. That I meant to say that I would say let's get you better first, at least on a more stable platform, and then if you're still struggling to with attention, self-organization, all those hallmarks of of ADHD, then we can look at those. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's interesting because obviously ADHD and addiction obviously do have a very big crossover. So it's quite sometimes quite hard to separate those two. Is that true, or is that something which is?
I mean, like what you were saying before, Filippo, with my dad's a GP, and he's got a specific joke about psychiatry in terms of, it's hard. Obviously, it's not as tangible and, and concrete in terms of this is the condition. So is it very much a process of elimination as well with psychiatry in terms of the co-occurring? Because quite often, when you medicate for ADHD, sometimes that's when you see autism come through. I mean, that was the case with my daughter, for instance. So would you say a lot of that, there's a bit of testing and measuring to kind of identify what's going on?
I'm afraid there is, yes. There is a bit of that.
Yeah, there has to be, right? It'd be great to hear from any other psychiatrists around that, if anyone wants to.
I saw Maita smiling.
Yeah, Maita?
Is there anything you want to add there, Maita?
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. You know what? I'm just struggling with the lights, and I'm so sorry because I'm trying to put my camera a bit brighter, but it's anyway. Sorry about that. You know what? It's very interesting because I worked in ADHD for over 20 years, and 20 years ago, when I was diagnosing someone with ADHD, a young person, then and I've been working more specifically in psychoeducation. So what I've done is like psychoeducation with families of children with ADHD, ADD. And when I was working with them and the families, then it turned out that then the parents or someone in the family would turn up saying, listen, I think I have ADHD, right? And now 20 years later, it's been kind of the opposite, okay? So sometimes like the patients that we they refer to us come with the I have the message, this young person has a father or mother that recently diagnosed with ADHD, ADD. So it's kind of like it's been a massive change. I think for the good, because
absolutely, yeah.
But previously it was just like really fascinating hearing parents when we were delivering the sessions and when we were disclosing and telling things about ADHD, and some of the parents would say, listen, I've been diagnosed with depression all my life, and then all of a sudden I realized it's not just depression, I don't have depression, I have ADHD. So it was very revealing for parents, right? But it's fantastic to see that the thing has somehow flipped to the other side, and we can then identify children, or it can be like the two ways to identify ADHD, ADD, right?
But that's a really good point.
I mean, and this is what I think I was kind of getting at in a way, because I think a lot of people would be fascinated by A, that connection, or B, what it's almost a chicken before the egg situation. So is someone who has a certain kind of depression, is that an offspring of their ADHD which has not been diagnosed? And therefore, because they have had that untreated ADHD, they might then engage in some kind of substance abuse to calm the thoughts and to help with some of the symptoms of ADHD. And therefore, the ADHD will be the primary factor. Is that something you sometimes find?
Yes, sometimes that is the case. But so I think I forget the expression that you used, Stephanie. But it generally is sometimes a game of trying things out and figuring it out, because most stimulants that you use in ADHD have some antidepressant properties, and they are a recognized second line strategy in someone who has responded to an antidepressant, but they still have residual symptoms. So you could conclude that someone, or someone could conclude that they always had ADHD and that's all there was, and not that they had also depression, for example. If you start a stimulant too soon.
Okay. Well, it's
Amber, I think.
Amber, sorry.
Yeah. Again, I'll be really brief, but I think we have to be really careful not to move from it's only this or it's only
that. Yeah.
I think sometimes even in psychiatry, you know, having worked as a psychiatrist for 20 years, I can see that that's happened over time. ADHD, often the adults with ADHD, if you look at an 18-year-old onwards, 50% overlap with anxiety and depression. So I think as a psychiatrist, when we're following DSM-5, you know, we're thinking about what else could explain some of these symptoms, but also what is the developmental picture here? So when did these symptoms start? Were they before the age of 12? Are they pervasive? What's the cost of the symptoms? You know, all those kind of things. I think taking a really careful history. And I've had patients, kind of young adult patients, where we've actually, you know, we've had a very honest conversation with each other. We've said, look, there's ADHD here. There's also some anxiety. This is what could happen if we treat this one first versus this one.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I agree with Filippo, you know, sometimes we do treat if it's moderate to severe depression, you know, there's risk, then actually we have to look as psychiatrists and with the patient together co-construct what's the highest level of priority here. Is it managing the risk? Is it kind of, you know, because I've had some patients who are really in difficult places, and it could be like, you know, you're saying chicken or egg, which one came first, and it's hard to know sometimes, right? But
I think,
if you're neurodivergent, then the soil in itself, you know, makes you more susceptible, more highly sensitive. Think about kind of temperament and thinking style and rejection sensitivity, dysphoria, all those things, more likely to experience trauma as well, you know. So I do, and process those experiences differently as well from a neurotypical brain. Then it really is, the formulation is really, really key here. And then explaining that to patients. So what, again, it's going back to what's the story here, not just the diagnosis, what's the story for the patient, and what do we think is going to best benefit them as a psychiatrist?
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, if anyone else has anything.
Yeah, I think we have to accept that almost by default, most patients with ADHD will have some comorbid or coexisting other psychiatric condition. I think we need to accept that, and therefore it requires expertise to look for those other conditions and recognize them and treat them appropriately. I think the one more thing that, just to add to complexity of all these, is that a lot of patients with ADHD would present with some traits of autism, if not autism as well. And majority of patients with autism will have symptoms of ADHD, if not ADHD as such. So, you know, if we also during assessments need to, we do screen for presence of autism, and then it need to be assessed. So it's and then of course, if you got autism and ADHD together, that's another ball game. You know, the presentation is also quite much more complex, and they've got again more anxiety-like presentation, and more dysphoria, and maybe more withdrawal and kind of emotional numbness or alexithymia, and that could be constructed or understood as depression, but it could just very well be just an autism. So, you know, again, I think it's very much tinkering, and I think it's very much like you say, probing this and probing that, and testing the hypothesis as we go through assessment. We create hypotheses and we test them, and we see what works, what doesn't, you know, where patients fit in, and that just reflects how you know, the DSM construct is imperfect. Yeah. And we try to fit something in, you know, there's something that is round in the square hole, you know, and that's what it is, you know, a lot of times.
As you say, it's always something which is a process, and it's trying to perfect that process as much as possible, or improve it as much as possible. We are going to move on one question there. I think we're going to go to a question which I think is very important in many ways. I think a lot of people would like to know, with your experience with your clients or patients with ADHD, how effective is the medication in terms of daily functioning? And as we're talking mainly about the workplace today, in the workplace, is there anyone who'd like to answer that question?
So I would say that in fact, I would say this to patients that the medications are very, very effective. One of the advantages compared to medications for in other conditions is that the idea with these medications, the stimulant medications, is that they act straight away. They cover a few hours over the course of the day, and then they have to be out of your system as the day comes to an end, so that they won't interfere with sleep. Most of the medication has to be out of your system. And so they fit very, very well a disorder where you want to see results quickly, which is not what you see in depression, for example, where it is well recognized that although some effect you might be able to detect with sophisticated tests from day one, just one antidepressant tablet will make very subtle changes to things like your pre-attentive bias for things. Actually, you start to feel better by way of small incremental changes over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And so medication for ADHD have that advantage instead. You see the benefits straight away. However, it goes with what we said at the very start, that that this is a disorder where the manifestations will follow the ups and downs of pressure and circumstances and hormonal changes and physical health and so on. You have to accept that medications would not be the be all and end all. In fact, they are just the way of giving yourself a stable platform on which you can make changes that then will enable you to manage these problems better and better, with psychological therapy or coaching and all the things that we were saying before. Because otherwise, you might find that you're very well on a certain dose of the medication, and then when the game gets tough, when there is added pressure, you see the problems re-emerging, and then your only answer to that will be, if you haven't done your work of understanding the mechanisms for those problems, your only answer will be, I need more medication. I need to escalate the medication and or try a different medication that is more effective. So it's a really crucial, and I think a well-known fact, but not by me, because I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 years. But the median duration of treatment with medication is 2 or 3 years. So the median is the point that splits a population in two. So 50% will stop medication after 2 or 3 years. Of course, their ADHD hasn't stopped, except there might be some cases in which it was misdiagnosed. But for the majority, it's about that gap between being on medication and being off medication that has shrunk over those 2 or 3 years. At some point, they decide that they don't want to make the effort, coming to see me and following the vagaries of availability of medication and having to get the prescription and all the other things.
That's it's absolutely fascinating, because I do think, as you say, you mentioned the fast actingness of the ADHD medication. You agree with this? There's so many people who have that story of it, their well-being changed once they've started the medication for ADHD.
Yeah, it can be completely transformational. I share when my daughter first went on it, when she was only 5, but she couldn't really have a conversation with her. She was very hyperactive, impulsive, quite dangerous, quite reckless, and she couldn't learn. She couldn't sit down and read. And then literally, I remember it so well. She took it within 25, 30 minutes, she's talking to me, sitting down at the table and actually kind of reading the book. I'm like, wow, that was, yeah. And, and I never forget when she was about 9, she turned around, she said to me, "Mum, thank you for medicating me. I wouldn't have been able to learn." And she wants to be a lawyer. She's at college now studying law, psychology, and business. You know, it was transformational. So yeah, that's just, well, that's the personal experience I've had.
Is there anything anyone else would like to Maita?
Yeah, just what you're saying, Steph, is absolutely what we sometimes, so the changes in presentation is going to depend on the patient. Not all the patients are benefiting as much as your daughter, but sometimes it's just like, as you say, transformative, like it can transform lives. Yeah. And in my experience, especially when other factors are well controlled, like when families have the support, when the child has support in school, then is when medication is just like making them blossom, right? Because the other factors have been well controlled, right? So the only factors is like the medication, but then again, how important it is for the medication to be absolutely tailored to the person, so that the person is benefiting the most, but without having side effects. Sometimes when I read these comments of people online talking about side effects and how bad they were feeling with the medication, and then I sometimes wonder who was managing the medication. And because I've seen some people just like putting the medication, just leaving the patient without much follow-up. So, and I wonder, like, you know, because in my experience, this is usually not the case. The case is you might or might not benefit as much, okay? But in any case, you shouldn't have side effects. So it's about, you know, balancing pros and cons, right?
Absolutely. Sorry, Amber, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I think, you know, what we know about treatment in children and treatment in adults, it is a bit different. So I think just really important, and with adults, because we do see, you know, more coexisting challenges, because, you know, you've lived with ADHD for a long period of your life. Some of our adults have lived half of their life with ADHD, right? And they've had to deal with, you know, difficult family situations, friendship rejections. You know, there's been lots and lots of layers to them, different parts to them, which in a way have been neglected, you know, when we think about it. And that's why I think that, you know, medication does have a huge, you know, it's really important, and it can be a game changer for so many adults with ADHD. But I think the bit to really add is, and what we're learning about, is that holistic bit. So if you're in fight or flight, if you've got anxiety, the medication may or may not be that effective. And therefore, it's really important to look at your sleep and look at kind of, you know, your nutrition, and look at your social connections and your work environment. Is it the right work environment for you? These are kind of often things that people with ADHD adults, they start thinking, actually, if I can't change this, or if I can't change my response to this, then actually maybe I'll try something else that's more suited to the way that I'm wired up and the way that I'm built. So I think, you know, that education piece again is really key alongside the medication.
100%. I think something you always say is the pills don't give
Well,
skills.
that's David Adka. The pills don't give skills.
But
pills don't give skills, yeah.
It is absolutely true. As helpful as the medication can be, there has to be that follow-up support, and I think that's where coaching can come in.
And therapy and
therapy.
Yes.
With that, as psychiatrists, where does the roles that both play come in terms of the coaching and the therapy? What are your recommendations for them? Would anyone like to come in on that?
I just like, you know, so you're asking about the therapy and coaching.
Yes, exactly. So in addition to the medication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. In my experience, though, I must say that unmedicated patients with ADHD do not really like CBT very much. And I think it's too regimented and it's too homework-like. And I think they just majority of them do not like it. I think something like DBT for emotional dysregulation can be very useful, I think, and coaching as a more pragmatic approach to finding strategies is certainly preferred. I think some mindfulness, I think some patients really like that. and something like a meditation in movement, maybe, you know, something like yoga, maybe Tai Chi, maybe not strictly a therapy, but I think that's kind of useful. And that's my, so certainly I recommend the therapy in one or the other form, but I think it's absolutely important as a holistic approach and not rely on medication alone. Yeah,
absolutely. It's taking that holistic approach and taking in all avenues. Maita, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. So yeah, basically, one of the things that I've seen or noticed is in so many people, even young people, just to rely too much on medication. And sometimes it's like they feel so much helped with the medication that they think medication can be everything. So I kind of understand where they come from, okay? But I always insist it's not just medication. It's about getting to know yourself, getting the help. I agree coaching might be much more effective in a way or accepted than some kind of type of therapy that can be more considered as a structured and boring or but then getting to know yourself and getting where things come from is so important. And I think one of the problems is if you rely too much on medication and then just ignore the signals and the things around you. So yeah, totally, 100%. Yeah, ADHD is not just medication; is more than that, far more than that.
Absolutely, and Stephanie, obviously, you have a relationship with
psychiatrists
here, so you know
together.
That relationship between coaching and
psychiatry, it's so important, particularly for clients, you know, titrating as well, because we can see them in coaching, we can see the difference. We can also kind of, a lot of ADHDs are blind to their own kind of patterns, but we can help them get those down so they can report them back to the psychiatrist as well. I've been noticing so it's really helpful in that stage in particular when they're starting to, you know, whether in titration, for instance. But yeah, we're always kind of working together. I've got some of our referral partner psychiatrists. We can, you know, they share kind of some of the reports on our common clients, so we can see what they're going through as well. So we're just more on the same page, so we can, again, taking more of that holistic approach.
Absolutely. And is there anything else anyone would like to add? We're coming to the end of
this has been amazing.
It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us this evening.
It's been, to have all your expertise.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
And we'll obviously we'll send you the recordings as well, and then I know Maita, if any you want to share, for instance, any of the psychoeducation programs that you're also been doing, I know for parents with kids with ADHD.
So thank you, Steph.
Send that link to us and we'll get that across the platforms as well, because ACs need all the support that they can get. Absolutely. And you guys definitely know what you're talking about, and it's a pleasure to partner with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Halloween.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We're taking a break now, so we've just got 20-minute break, so please go and answer your door to the trick-or-treaters, and we'll see you at 6:20.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye. Hello, everyone. Hi, we are back. Hopefully you got a little bit of a break, maybe answered the door. Hopefully you didn't get eggs chucked at you. So crossing the fingers there. But we're going to resume. So you're in for a bit of a treat. We've got an interview that I did with Connor Calthrop from IMG Media. So basically just the quick kind of background context to that. Connor reached out to me 2 years ago now, I think, and invited me to come into IMG Media Studios. So this is where literally there's Premier League in the actual kind of building. And I was a little bit naughty. We got to the studio to record, and I did sneak up the stairs to check out the Premier League part of it all. It's very exciting. It was all very exciting. And we did this fantastic kind of training with a panel with Eddie Strongman. He was the world's strongest.
Eddie Stewart.
Eddie Hall.
Eddie Hall, sorry, Eddie Hall.
Exactly.
World's
he was.
Man.
Yes, he was the world's
few years ago. Yeah.
And
Amazing strong man.
and it was the
Amazing
most,
strong man,
and it
yeah.
was, yeah, and it was the funniest, kind of panel, the stuff that this guy came out with, honestly. Yeah, if you check out his Facebook, you'll kind of get a good idea of how unapologetically himself he is, which again, very much a trademark of ADHD. It was fantastic. So what we've done, I recorded an interview. I did an interview with Connor about the training, and he's going to talk about, you'll hear from him in relation to how that training was received and really important messages in there for employers. So do have a listen, and I will share that with you now.
Enjoy.
Exactly. I'm here with Connor Coulthorpe from IMG Media. Hey Connor, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Thanks, Steph. How you doing?
Yeah, good. We just caught up earlier, didn't we? And we were saying it's been a while since we came in and provided that ADHD awareness training to IMG, meeting with Eddie Hall.
It was fantastic, and people still talk about that today in the office a lot of the time and around the company. I think people are trying to get their own talks. They're inspired, and there was a lot of talk afterwards, straight after we'd done that talk with Eddie and yourself and Dylan as well. There was a lot of conversations. People were having conversations, and that was opening up the conversation on ADHD, which is the main point of doing that talk in the first place. So it was fantastic to have achieved that and to have got amazing feedback, and hopefully moving forward, I know it's been nearly a year now since that talk, we can try and implement some more ADHD awareness around the company. But initially, it has created a lot of chat between people, and that's fantastic, obviously.
And that was spurred on by you. That was you that came out to us asking for that kind of training. What was behind that? What made this a priority for you?
So I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 14. And I think for me, it was something I didn't really understand that when I got diagnosed. And I guess, what a kid or teenager understands it at that age. And so I think I've had a bit longer maybe than some people who are being diagnosed now in their adult lives to have got used to ADHD and got used to how to use all the quirks that come with it to my advantage and use your strengths, and try and show other people that, and show your employers that, to show employees that across not only my company, but hopefully other companies as well, and share that information to others. It's not just because you're diagnosed with something, it's not doom and gloom. You use it as a positive. And I think that was the main thing I wanted to get across with doing that talk and doing the training. There's a lot of positives that come from having ADHD, and it should be something that's celebrated and not something that's looked at as like a hindrance or something that gets in the way. So I think that was the initial reason for wanting to do it, and to push myself as well. It was something I'd always wanted to do, a talk on something that was quite personal to myself, and hopefully inspire people. And it ended up being really successful. So obviously it was great. And what great guests I had on. I had yourself, I had Eddie as well, Eddie Hall from World's Strongest Man, and Dylan Jane as well from my company too, works for Premier League. It was a fantastic panel, and yeah, as I say, a really good success.
Honestly, you're a pioneer in this field, in the media sports industry for IMG, because it was the first ADHD training, wasn't it? Was that the first kind of ADHD awareness?
As to my knowledge, that was the very first one conducted at IMG. I was quite surprised actually, because a lot of people would say ADHD is quite current. It's obviously been around for ages, but it's a lot of people now. You get a lot of people self-diagnosing themselves. It's a lot more talked about than it was, certainly since when I was diagnosed when I was 14, which was in 2011. Or yeah, I think it was 2011. Yeah, it's been a while, but back then it wasn't really talked about, and now it's a lot more talked about. So I thought maybe in the last few years it would have been something that someone might have done a talk on, tried to do an informed session on it, but no one had. And so I thought, great, I want to be the person that does that and try and get some really good guests on, and obviously managed to get yourself on, who was a fantastic talking head and gave some invaluable information to people in the room and online who joined in throughout IMG. And also it was great to have someone as well known as Eddie Hall talking about his experiences as well, and then someone from my own company, Dylan, who spoke so elegantly about his experiences of being diagnosed later in life too. It was just fantastic, and I think that everything I wanted from that talk was a fantastic success, basically.
I remember the buzz afterwards, the way you spoke about it, just the energy in the room, having all those people there listening. Eddie was very funny. Some of the things I remember he said, I was just like, he didn't actually just say that. Yeah, he did. ADHD, impulsivity, complete.
That's an example of what's made someone great and what's made them who they are today, really. And obviously, he might have still got as far as he has with his career if he didn't have ADHD, possibly. We'll never know. But I think it was a real factor into why he is so successful. And there's a lot of people out there just like him who are incredibly successful with ADHD because they've got that little something that some other people may not have, which is the quirks that ADHD brings.
The drive, right? The drive, the perseverance, and very much what you said earlier, the passion. So you obviously were really passionate about bringing more ADHD awareness to IMG, to put it on the agenda. What were you hoping for in terms of shifts, maybe in the culture? What were you hoping for from raising awareness?
I think creating conversation to begin with. I think that's the initial thing always with these things, with these sort of talks, is spreading the awareness and then, creating that conversation after, people afterwards talking in the corridor. I had people say they went back to their desks, they're talking about it for half an hour afterwards. It's sparking that conversation of, oh yeah, actually I have a family relative who has it, and oh, I have this, and I know this person, my friend, it was diagnosed. And it starts to open up all these sort of gaps in your brain where you're like, oh God, yeah, that means that. And I think initially that was what I wanted from it, was just that initial awareness. But also going forward, I wanted to try and maybe implement some sort of training for people within the company, especially a creative company like mine, a broadcast company riddled with ADHD in the creative industry. So there would have been a lot of people who would have been interested in the coaching, but not just for them, but also for managers and people who have direct reports, because they might have people in their teams who have ADHD, and it's about knowing how to manage them to get the best out of them, because if they know how to get the best out of them, then they've got a real asset in their team.
Again, very forward thinking. You are such a leader, just in terms of what you did, bringing this on the agenda of IMG, driving that forward. I know how busy you are, but you carved out time and also got it on the agenda, obviously, of the powers that be at IMG that agreed to put it on. You did all of that because you felt it was important. You are definitely a leader with so much potential. And I know we've been waiting to get you coached, and hopefully we'll get you into coaching soon. You've really got such foresight in terms of what you're saying about manager training in particular. Like you said, that first step is starting the conversation, which can only really happen by making it feel safer and giving people a bit more of an ADHD lens generally, the organization itself, and normalizing it, not even normalizing it, but also focusing on, hey, it's actually quite a good thing to have, and people at the top of their industries have it, and it's not the stigmatized condition that you may have thought. It's safe to come out. It's safe to talk about it. That's what you did. That's what you achieved.
Yeah, that's the initial thing. I think when I first came up with the idea, I'd wanted to do it for a long time, actually, in truth, for a number of years. Quite a few years ago, during COVID, during lockdown, I did a self-recorded podcast, almost like a diary entry of my experience with ADHD, which is probably still out there somewhere. This is
find that. We should get
probably
that
quite
out
a few years ago. Yeah. So that was a good, probably 5 years ago now. I got some really good responses from friends and people and friends of friends, and I thought, cool, that felt good. It'd be really good to do that on an even bigger scale, and maybe do it to a company or something. And at the time when I did that, I think I was furloughed. I just worked in retail. I wasn't working at IMG. But it was always something on my mind when I joined IMG that might be something really cool to try and do. And I think it was only then there was a group at IMG called Free to Be, a fantastic group, where they give you that platform to be able to do these sort of talks. And that was it, really. I joined the team and just said to them, I want to do a talk on ADHD. And they gave me all the resources I needed to be able to do that, which was fantastic. And obviously went a long way. And then I went about creating an agenda and finding the contributors and trying to get an eclectic group of speakers as well.
That's what I loved about it. That was very smart.
That was the TV brain thinking, I think, on that. How do I want it to look? I don't want to just have the same 4 talking heads there on the panel. We want to have a real mix of people. And obviously for a company like us, which is so heavily linked with sports as well, someone like Eddie Hall is perfect. I think that nice link. It was really good. And I'd love to do more of them, to be honest. So,
it's open.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely.
It's on the bucket list.
We're going to bring that more to the front. That's what the coaching will do for you personally. You really are a pioneer in this space, and IMG is very lucky to have you. And what you're talking about is ADHD strength, that creativity of yours, that vision, being able to see to create that vision and make it come to life. Would you say that's one of your ADHD strengths?
Definitely. I think having the creative vision is a huge thing for most people with ADHD. Having that ingenuity and think outside of the box and come up with clever ideas, not just going for direct solution, thinking of different ways to make it a bit more inventive or add a little bit of creativity to it, and thinking about things like the panel and how we would get a nice mix and how I get different answers, and hopefully there'd be something for everyone there to get as much engagement as possible.
I was going to say engaging.
So I think ADHD definitely does play a massive part for me in a lot of those things, and a lot of the thinking outside of the box and thinking of different creative ways to bring something to life, basically.
You absolutely smashed it. You really did. And what would you say in terms of any shifts you've noticed, those conversations started happening, but any other kind of things you noticed after the training in terms of the culture? It'd be great to hear.
I think, being completely honest, I think it did fall a little bit more flat going into the new year. I had conversations around trying to implement different types of training at the time, and unfortunately they never came to fruition just because there was a lot of other things going on within the company and a lot of restructures and so on. So it wasn't, unfortunately, the right time, although the team did say to me, if we can maybe get you coached up to begin with and use you like a case study and, hamster on the wheel, if you will, then maybe we can look going forward at implementing this sort of training and seeing if it's worth it, and you could be an advocate for it. So this is where we've got to now, as we finally, with the help of obviously Access to Work as well, have managed to get some coaching nearly sorted. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks we should be there. But that's just for me, obviously, individually, and then who knows, looking forward in half a year's time or even hopefully less, we might be able to implement something for the company, perhaps. And that's something that I'm really keen on trying to push for and striving towards.
Advocating.
But I think it's all about timing, though, with a lot of these things, is trying to strike while the iron's hot and try to strike at the right time. And although I tried to do that while the iron was hot last time, it doesn't mean that it won't be hot again. And hopefully after the coaching that I get, I should be able to advocate a lot better and be like, look, case in point, it's really beneficial. So we will see. But fingers crossed.
And I really appreciate your honesty about this, actually, because this is why we've shifted from the model of the one-off awareness training. So through our ADHD Advocate, we do the one-off training, which we did with you guys. However, what we noticed when I was asking around about outcomes from the training to different companies and just reflecting on them myself, I wasn't able to get clear on what those outcomes were. I didn't really have, apart from, like you said, starts the conversation, gives a bit of an ADHD lens. However, that compared to the coaching outcomes, right? I've got hundreds. I could tell you so many outcomes that coaching achieves with 100% certainty. And I realized, hang on, that's a bit of a problem. If the one-off awareness training isn't reaching nowhere near the kind of outcomes coaching does. So we thought, let's take a coaching approach to the training. And that's why we created Ascend ADHD, because I've been doing these talks in education and the workplace. And it's true, this bolted on approach, which is bolt on, adding this training session and then going, bolt on doesn't work. You got to bake it in. That's what I was hearing throughout education sector, workplace, and through the coaching itself, which is a baked in approach. We've got all the evidence. It does work. So that's what we're doing now with the companies we work with. It's partnering with them like coaching, not just, here you go, bye-bye, we're off now, but here we go. And then how's that going? And what do we need to do here? And what about the manage, like you said, and that's why I said you've got really good foresight. We need to also help the managers communicate, navigate rejection sensitivity safely as well, know how to set up the ADHD to succeed, to be a more contributing member of the team, be happy, be motivated, same as the peers, other people working with the ADHD, and providing comprehensive holistic support and being there, having those touch points. How's it going? Oh, okay, so that didn't work. So HR's got opportunities to test, measure, and embed. I'm glad you were very honest with that, because that's the problem, isn't it? If you don't keep it going and bake it in, unfortunately, it can go a bit on the back burner.
I think from my experience, certainly from the company we've now with IMG's point of view, I think a lot of it is having the resources and the time for people to look into it properly. Half the time, teams are so stretched that they don't have the capacity to be able to look into implementing certain trainings and certain coaching in there, you do have to just keep pushing it and almost don't let up. Obviously, I'm quite new trying to push this sort of thing. So for me, looking back and looking in hindsight, that's probably what I'd say is just you really do have to just keep pushing people a little bit more, even if they maybe say no. It's okay, what about if we look at it in X amount of months or something? And obviously they might say yes, and then you might get pushed back again, because who knows what will happen in a few months' time. But it's always good to try and, you know, not let off or take no as the final answer.
You are a true advocate, Connor.
Yeah, and
Good
just
change maker.
yeah, but I think people out there want it, and people in a lot of companies, especially creative companies, will really benefit off ADHD coaching, because creative companies are riddled with ADHD. There's a lot of people with ADHD in the creative space, and why would you not want to enhance your company, and why would you not want to benefit off people with ADHD by giving them the training and support they need to then strengthen all the quirks that come with it, and obviously having the understanding as well of how they work.
Independently of D&I, it just makes business sense, right? If someone gets promoted to leadership, you get leadership management training so that you can be at your best in that particular role. We all benefit from training to be the best we can be. And that very much applies to neurodiversity. It will unlock all the strengths that you have, the competitive advantage that a lot of ADHDers, when they're in the right role and supported, to leverage their strengths, and they're not burdened and held back by the challenges, the admin, all those hoops that they might need to jump, all that blocks them from just doing what they do best.
Yeah, exactly. You just said it there, why you wouldn't want to do it from a business point of view, to implement that sort of training. If you've got training for managers and for people trying to upskill in certain areas, do not have it to benefit a huge majority of people in your workforce. And I'd be interested to see how many people have ADHD within the creative space, because I'm sure it's more than other areas. It's definitely something that people should try and take advantage of, really.
We'll keep at it, won't we, Connor? And
good fight.
Yeah, we'll see you in coaching soon. Yeah.
Nice one. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Steph, and take care.
You too.
Hello, everybody. What an amazing interview with Connor there, and it's great to hear his insights, and really appreciated. Up next, we've got Ollie Stewart from MSD UK, and just can I say, everyone, if you have dropped off, if you've gone out this evening, have a lovely evening. But we have got some great stuff coming up. We've got Ollie Stewart, as I say, from MSD UK. We've also got Ash Phillips.
Ash Phillips, yes, from Rebellious, so entrepreneur with ADHD. So you definitely want to stick around and listen to Ash and his advice in relation to entrepreneurship with ADHD. And then also Charlotte Moore, who's stepping in for Luke Furman. If you want to find out more about how to best support ADHD when you're a manager, when you're managing a team of people and you've got ADHD, how to best manage that with ADHD. So that's an interview with Charlotte coming up after this video.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so shall we?
This is Ollie Stewart and MSD UK.
Okay. And here we go.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Timothy Morgan-Evans. I'm here with Ollie Stewart from MSD UK. We're going to be talking a little bit about ADHD, the supply chain, and entrepreneurship today, and how that all fits together. So first of all, I'd like Ollie to introduce himself and just tell us a little bit about MSD UK.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim, and good evening, everyone. So yeah, my name is Ollie, as mentioned by Tim, and I work for an organization called MSD UK, and that stands for Minority Supplier Development. We're a not-for-profit, and we've been operating for almost 20 years. So it's 20 years next year, which is pretty exciting for us. And essentially what we do is we support diverse-owned businesses within the corporate supply chain space. So we work together with small, diverse businesses that want to work with corporate organizations, and we also partner with those corporate organizations to bring them together and share opportunities, all with the goal of creating an inclusive supply chain.
That's amazing. It's amazing work, and it's incredibly important. But small businesses have organizations like yourself? Because at the moment, it's really hard for small businesses to get off the ground. So that's great work. Could you just tell us, just for a lot of people out there, what exactly is the supply chain? If you're describing it to someone perhaps with a small business, how do you relate that to your members?
Yeah, of course. So I guess the supply chain is a big piece of business in terms of where a lot of the money is spent within organizations. So we're talking around the entire network involved with producing and delivering kind of a product or service.
Yeah.
And that encompasses everything from raw materials all the way to the end customer. So whether you're selling kind of goods or services, you're going to be part of a supply chain.
Okay. And so one example of that would be, say, if you're a small goods producer, say you produce a product, say if it's a food product like cakes, you have your own range of business, your next person on the supply chain would be someone like a supermarket or someone like that who you would then try and partner with to sell your product.
Exactly that. So the buyers of your products or in your supply chain who you're selling to as well can be part of that. In the MSD UK perspective, the reason that we're trying to work with our diverse businesses and our corporate partners is that we find that diverse small businesses bring a lot of innovation and creativity to the supply chain. So a lot of big buyers of products and services, they just stick with the people they know best. They've been doing the same boring old service for a while, but we create an opportunity to actually highlight these diverse businesses that have creative, innovative ways to do things better.
And that's the most exciting thing, isn't it? It's getting that innovation into the space. It's seeing what exciting things are out there, helping them with that product or service get further up to do well. And it's great to see that happening, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And what advice do you genuinely give to your, first of all, your small businesses, the ones who have the service, have a product that they want to sell or provide? What advice do you give to them when you're starting to get up the supply chain?
Yeah, I think the first piece of crucial advice is that this supply chain, the procurement space that we operate in, it is a long game. It does take time. So you've got to be patient and you've got to have a bit of perseverance. But I think the other key thing is you've got to have your ducks in a row, so to speak. You've got to understand the organization that you're trying to sell your service or product to. What are their requirements? What are they looking for? What kind of policies do they need in place? And all these kind of things. So there's lots of things to think about before you can just jump in and win a contract. And at MSD UK, we do support our members and our businesses in that space and give them tips and tricks, and programs and things to help them. It's just understanding that it is a bit of a long game and there is a bit of work required to win these contracts.
Absolutely. And it's obviously a very competitive market anywhere. So you've got to appear, or you've got to have your, as you say, your ducks in line. I think I'd agree from the ADHD's perspective as well. It can be very tempting to rush into something and to go for that partnership straight away. It's actually, as much as it's tempting to do that, it's actually a very risky thing to do, because unless, as you say, your ducks in line are in line, unless you've got that pitch managed, the business plan managed, it can be cause more harm than good. So I'd say from that position, make sure you have everything right. Make sure you're very comfortable with what you're doing, you're confident in it, and play to your strengths. Play to what you do best if you can. Make sure, if at all possible, you're delegating those things you're not necessarily that strong at to other people or to someone you're able to delegate it to, just so you know you're focusing on your strengths. Would you say that would be with that for most businesses, or?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's, being realistic about where you're actually at now versus where you want to be. So it's great to have the goal that you want to work with one of these really large businesses with a great big contract. But realistically, if you don't have the accounts or the cash flow or all the kind of things in place beforehand to even meet the criteria of that, then there's no point going for it now. But you can look at maybe collaborating with smaller businesses and stepping your way up, or something that we encourage a lot is partnering with other businesses, delivering similar products or service and coming together in a consortium type approach, because that way you can split your risk further, you might meet the criteria for that organization. But it's all around creating a track record of delivering this product or service that your end customer eventually wants. So I'd say, don't rush in to win the mighty big contract straight away, because there's going to be a bunch of T's and C's and probably a few things that you're not actually going to be able to meet straight away. So it's around creating that kind of roadmap to get there and achieve those things.
Absolutely. And that's why things like MSD UK are so helpful, because they give you that roadmap, that guidance, help, which a lot of people might need, particularly with ADHD, to get that business going.
Yeah, I think a good example in this space as well is around something we talk a lot about within MSD UK at the moment is something called the Procurement Act. So if you're working in the public sector space, this is something that came in earlier this year. And essentially it's changed the criteria in terms of requirements for public sector organizations to use small businesses for, which is great news for our membership and our diverse home base. But there's also something they've introduced, which is something called a weighting on social value. So what does that actually mean? A lot of the businesses we deal with, they're always giving back to community. This is what they do, but how do they actually tell that story? We give them the skills to shape that. But if you didn't know about this and you went and applied for one of these contracts and you didn't have the social value story embedded in your thing, you wouldn't even make it past the first kind of screening, because that is now essential based on the Procurement Act. So it's exactly that, understanding what's actually happening in this space, what's required, making sure you just don't rush in head first and spend a whole bunch of time on these contracts and things like that, just for something that you might not even be eligible for in the first place.
Absolutely. And actually, again, why something like MSD UK can help so much is that then you've got that awareness of the space, you've got that education, and you've got that roadmap and kind of support network to help you go there.
Yeah, I think that support network is exactly that, right? So we focus on less on that perfection and more on the progress space. So a lot of kind of peer-to-peer mentoring in our programs and our network. So these are other entrepreneurs who have potentially, maybe they're a few steps ahead of you, maybe a few steps behind, but it's all around sharing, shared learnings and things like that. So you're not doing it alone and you don't have to figure out everything by yourself. We've got a network where you can ask those questions. I think, yeah, it's really helpful and really important.
I think that's hugely important for ADHD, especially because it can feel like you're doing it alone. And it can feel like a lot of ADHDs will want to do their business their own way, have their own idea maybe, but it's always good to have that support network who aren't necessarily trying to change what you're doing, but they can give you that advice, that roadmap, which is always so helpful to have. And just in that space, how many, do you have questions around your neurodiversity in MSD UK? Do you have a lot of ADHD members? Is that something you, as part of your diversity infrastructure, is that something you manage a lot?
So naturally in the kind of entrepreneurial world, there is a lot of neurodiversity, as you will understand. So 100% within our network, we have a lot of work in that space. And our goal as MSD UK is to create an inclusive supply chain. And that's inclusive in all sense of that word. We're driving in terms of neurodiversity, all those kind of other inclusive aspects as well. But I think in terms of, and a good example as well, in one of our current programs we're running right now, we have a peer-to-peer mentoring session. It works really well in the sense that we get people that were strangers at the start of the session, now really good colleagues, share one problem they have, and then what action will they take? And then the whole process is just about accountability from the peer to ask, have you actually done this action that you said you would, and things like that. I know that works really well in terms of just making things happen and giving accountability to each other, so you're not doing it all alone anymore.
100%. That's very much how a lot of the coaching works as well. It's setting an action, giving yourself accountability, giving yourself a deadline, making that action as simple and achievable as possible. Not necessarily easy, but achievable with the instructions you need to be able to do it, and having that person on the other end is going to be holding you to account so you can achieve that action. So that's a brilliant thing to do. Absolutely brilliant. It's great, as I say, to have those organizations out there who can help you do it, like MSD UK. Another thing we'd like to talk about as well is the pitch. The pitch is a hugely important thing. If you're going to be talking to someone above you on the supply chain, that person or corporation you want to sell your business to, essentially, you need to have that pitch ready. Obviously, by this point, as we stressed before, your cards should be in order. You have your business plan there, you know your accounts, You don't have to have done that. If that's not your strength, if you can in any way delegate that to someone either in that space who you can do that, or someone in that space, whether it's accounts or any of those sides of the business which aren't your strength, try and delegate that. But once those things are in order, then it's your pitch. And again, how would you recommend you do that, Olive?
Yeah, I think, yeah, the pitch is obviously the pretty vital thing, and there's a lot that we do in that space as well. And I think I'll actually just jump back one step before the pitch.
Okay.
Something that we focus on a lot in supporting is, especially working with corporate organizations, is something called a capability statement. This is essentially a one-pager, which it's like a pitch, but it's all written down. A lot of the time, you're not going to get the opportunity to have a face-to-face with an organization straight away, but this is that first step. Capability statement is essentially a pitch on page. And this talks around what your value proposition is. So what are you actually delivering? What stands your part? What's your track record? Who are you as an individual and entrepreneur? It's all the kind of things that you want to get across in your pitch that pack neatly on a one-page document. So when a busy buyer is coming across an email that you've sent, they can read this and be like, okay, cool. This makes sense. I want to hear more. And then we go into the pitch. So that's something that we do a lot in one of our programs called our Pathways by Growth. I can share more details with you, Tim. But we go into that capability statement, and then that naturally feeds into the pitch. So a pitch is your way that you've understood the organization. You don't have a generic pitch. Every pitch is going to be slightly different depending on which organization you're talking to. You need to understand what kind of terminology they use. So I know there's a few examples of one of our businesses pitching to an organization, and they were trying to say that they can work in the Asia Pacific region, but this organization called Oceania. So from the get-go, it was like, you don't understand our business. So there you go. So it's all about understanding the terminology, the values of the organization you're pitching to. I think the second key part is make sure you're consistent and make sure you're you, right? So you are what makes your business different. You are what stands out. So make sure you get that across in the pitch. And then obviously really key part is actually make sure you get across what it is that your value proposition is. So what is your goods or service, and how does that differentiate from your competition? How do you stand above them? And then it's also key to include a few case study examples as well. Talk about what you've already achieved in relation to the work you show. So I think track record is really key for corporate organizations in terms of wanting to bring someone on. So the biggest reason that a corporate organization will not take on a contract or a business is risk. Risk is their key kind of motivator. So if they talk to you, they go through your pitch, understand your business, and they don't see that you've delivered any similar work before, or you've got any kind of understanding in the space, then the risk to take you on is way too high, and they're not bothering to carry on through. So it's about making sure you've got relevant experience to what you're doing. But I'd say those are the key points I'd get across, which I know is a lot to take in.
No, absolutely not. I think it's great for people to know, and it's great for any business, however far down the line they are, to maybe as an exercise to be able to do it, to say, what is my strength? What are we offering? If I was selling it to someone, what would I say about this business? I think however far you are down the line in some ways, because then you've got that statement in front of you written down that says, we've done this. This is the product we offer. This is its strengths. This is why it's personal to me. Because then you've got that statement in front of you as well. It's a good exercise to have, not just in the air, but as a statement written down, so you know what those strengths are, which you can then go and sell. Because unless I think it's written down as a statement with all the points outlined, it's very difficult to know exactly sometimes what it is you do, even though you know it to a certain capacity in your head.
Yes, yeah.
Written down is a different thing. Then you can go back to it. You can say, no, but this and this, we've done this. And if it's missing something, then you know what it's missing.
Exactly, yeah.
We haven't got it there. And I think what you said as well about how to appeal to different people in terms of marketing, that's the most important thing. It's not about you. In some ways, it's about them. What will appeal to them? Which I think is, as much as it is you are selling your USP, which is what you do, how will that appeal to the person who you're trying to appeal to? It's hugely important as well.
Yeah, and it becomes another piece of collateral you can use as well. Obviously, you chop and change based on who you're talking to and the organization. But if you have a base template, then that becomes a much easier task when someone asks you, can you provide me a 1-page of your organization so I can pass it on to a buyer? You're prepared, you're ready to go, just a few tweaks. So that capability state, becomes very key.
And you've got, as you say, you've got that there. You don't have to work on it again if you're trying to appeal to someone else in the market. And I think that advice, again, is great. Be adaptable.
Yeah.
You can't just shift yourself a little bit. You do risk the competition just taking over that.
And I think another key thing that I forgot to mention is don't overpromise what you can do. So I think you were talking to me earlier about make sure you walk before you can run. So a lot of these things, it can actually get quite bad if you overpromise something on a tender and you actually win it and you don't have the ability to do it. You can end up being sued by the company that's put out the contract. So it's making sure that you can actually do what you say you do. That's vitally important. And a lot of corporate organizations, they are just looking for specific help on one specific thing. So if you're applying for a piece of work and you say, I can do X, Y, Z, they might not know how to fit you in. But if you say, I'll do X really well, then they know that's what you do and they can make that work and fit you into their supply chain as well. So just be careful not to overpromise and make sure that you are honing in on what it is that you actually do really well.
I agree. I think that's absolutely key with ADHD as well. ADHD sometimes might tend to be over optimistic, try and please that person or try and say, oh no, we can do that. Just be careful. It's probably better not to get that contract than to promise you can do it. So just maybe get someone else to say, look over what you can do and say, can you really do that? Sometimes I think that might be a good idea to say, look, realistically, maybe you can't. I worked in companies where someone's overpromised on a deal or some in a kind of a capacity where they've said, we can do this. They've underestimated how many man hours it will take. They've underestimated how much work it will take, etc. They've given very little space for any kind of delays, which always will happen. You've got to allow for the fact that might happen. That's almost reached an end of contract. Again, legal action, all these things you really don't want. As you say, don't overestimate yourself. Don't be overly optimistic. I think it's a very good takeaway. I totally agree. What's MSD UK aiming to do in the future? Is there anything you've got big coming up?
I think, as I mentioned at the start, so next year is our 20 years of operating. So we're looking at doing a lot in terms of celebrating our network and our businesses and driving a lot more in terms of supporting all kind of diverse businesses. So obviously MSD UK Minority Supply Development, our focus for a long time has been around ethnic minority owned businesses, that we're seeing that the need for support across all kind of diverse businesses. We're ramping up in terms of the programs we're delivering, the events we're producing, and trying to expand our network as much as possible. It's really exciting time to be joining MSD UK or being a part of MSD UK's greater network. So I would say lots happening in 2026.
That's brilliant to hear. And I'm also very proud to say that Ascend is a very proud member of MSD UK. And we'll be having a chat, hopefully in the new year, about something we've got very exciting coming up. We're going to be running Ascend for Entrepreneurs. We're going to also be trying to help both small businesses, business owners with ADHD, give them those guidelines, have a program, something which we're really excited about developing. And we're going to have a good chat and work with MSD UK with that. So excited to see you.
Looking forward to that, yeah.
Very much looking forward to it too, Ollie. And looking forward to that chat. Stay tuned as well for that. That will be coming up soon. And there'll be info on the website at ascendadhd.com. Okay, thank you so much for today, Ollie, and have a very good evening.
Thank you, Tim. Enjoy yourself.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Hello. So hopefully, hi, Charlotte.
Cool. Hi, Steph.
Good to see you. So that was just Tim and MSD UK having a chat. Hopefully, probably found that quite interesting in terms of the procurement process when you're a small business. And the hurdles, right, that ADHDers often will have to face, particularly, if they're kind of left to their own devices and bite off more than they can chew, which is quite the, common challenge for ADHDers. But today we've got Charlotte Charlotte Moore from DMG Media originally, and I coached Charlotte. How long ago did we start coaching?
God, it was quite a long time ago now. I think it's about maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, and we sort of coached it about nine months. We did it, which was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. And so why we thought Charlotte would be fantastic to speak to today is because I think she'll really be able to speak to the challenges that managers with ADHD can often have to overcome in the workplace, but then also the transformational kind of power of ADHD coaching and how that helped you navigate those challenges and fulfill your potential as well is the next thing. But so let's start. I'll ask a few questions. So I guess the first one, Charlotte, what drew you to ADHD coaching and what were you hoping to change or achieve at work?
It's a good question. What drew me to ADHD coaching? Initially, I sort of came in a little bit blind, didn't know exactly what ADHD coaching was, but I'd been recommended, to come and see you because I was facing challenges at work. And really, I just wanted sort of less chaos and to feel like things were more manageable. For me, it was sort of the first time in my career where I felt it was too much. There was too much going on. And I'd been diagnosed with ADHD years before, but I hadn't necessarily given it much thought or had any tools. So it was sort of opened my eyes to sort of a whole new world.
Yeah, and that's quite a common thing actually when an ADHD, particularly a high performing one like yourself, a very busy one like yourself, we get the diagnosis and it's like, okay, and it's kind of an afterthought. It's, we don't pause to process what that actually means. Yeah. So I'm really glad I think it was Dr. Guruswamy, who is one of our longest standing referral partner psychiatrists, that pointed you in the direction. And so we've got really Dr. Guruswamy to thank for introducing you to ADHD coaching.
Definitely, yeah. And it was, I really just wanted to learn how, use the tools and gather sort of strengths to be able to manage sort of day to day.
Yeah, because what did you do? Like just in terms of your role, what were your kind of responsibilities?
So sort of managing the commercial division at a publisher. So that sort of is basically how they make money. And it sort of covers, wide variety. It might be sort of sales, but then also you've got writers or sort of journalists, and then you've got analysts and different people sort of, I guess, doing the behind the scenes, how are we actually doing? So it's sort of a wide variety of sort of different pots, which was the challenge I was finding.
I was going to say, because what would you say, how would you describe your main kind of strengths in terms of what you contributed?
Main strength is definitely seeing the big picture. So I knew sort of where we needed to go, what we needed to do, but it was the day-to-day stuff that I found incredibly challenging. So we had a 5-year strategy. I knew how we were going to implement it. I knew how we were going to get there, but it was actually sort of the implementation and sort of pushing that through where I would hit sort of stumbling blocks.
Yeah, and that's quite often what we hear with ADHD is in this kind of position is particularly if you're the visionary, if you can see what needs to happen, the problem is it's the systems that aren't working. It's the people that aren't also seeing the vision and seeing the issues and being able to do anything about it. And that can really lead to huge frustrations.
Definitely. And I think it's, being in any corporation, there's different levels and different layers, and you've got to understand that, and that adds in complexities as well, which I think affected what any ADHD sort of has to navigate that.
Yeah. So what did you learn about, how your ADHD shows up at work, especially without medication? Because obviously that was the time that there were those medication shortages.
Yes. It was sort of at the end of the summer, and there was the global shortages, and maybe some of the the biggest challenges is, and I now know is time blindness, and this sort of I kind of see it in two ways. It's one sort of out of sight, out of mind. So if someone said something to me, I was like, yeah, I'll get right on that. Unless I've made a note of it somewhere or put some sort of reminder, it's gone and it's not coming back. So that's sort of one thing. And then the other side of it was underestimating the amount of time it would take to actually do something. So I'd look at my calendar in the morning. I don't know, I've got a meeting at 10, 12, 2, 3. I think I can do loads of other stuff. But before you know it, you're jumping from one thing to the other. So that was what I found really hard, and also leads into sort of the transitioning from task to task. There were so many different things in different areas. So I think started to slip because I just generally couldn't keep it all in my head.
Yeah, and particularly without that medication.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that makes it so much more difficult to focus, to be able to get started on these things. Yeah, I mean, I know that was one of the first things we worked on, was you were identifying, the coaching gave you that space to get clearer on, and there was quite a list. This is the thing with ADHD is, right? We wonder why we're not kind of getting that momentum, we're not getting things done. It's what is wrong with me? But then when you had that space to be clear, and then honestly, there were quite a few things, like about 10 or something that we identified, and we had to name it to tame it, to actually try and work out, well, what can we do? What can we do in relation to each of those things?
Yeah, I don't think I did my expenses in maybe 6 months when there was that medication shortage, because I just knew I wasn't going to get them done, and that had to be okay.
Yeah, so that was about that importance of adjusting expectations, isn't it? Like looking through that ADHD lens, adjusting expectations, communicating did coaching kind of help you as well, not just get clear on those, what expectations were achievable for you, but also be able to communicate expectations to others so that they could adjust?
Definitely. I think a big part I learned in coaching is, I had unrealistic expectations. And they were unrealistic in the sense of, taking on too much work, not sort of turning around and being like, actually, no, but not no, we can't do it, but there's a reason why we can't do it, and communicating that, up. I think that was a really important skill I learned through coaching, which I didn't have before, which is just as important as communicating down. So that was sort of, one of the main things that I, really took away. You have to be able to say no to someone, but actually communicate the reason why. And then also find resources where we can do stuff at a time where we can do it, because things move very quickly. As a publisher, it's a 24-hour news cycle. You had to be sort of adaptable to shift to what was the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, you were just thinking about it, you were sandwiched, weren't you, in terms of you were a manager, you had people to manage, but then also you were very much held to account and needed to also explain, so both ways, right? That is such a difficult position for an ADHD to be in, without medication as well.
Definitely. And I think another thing that I've really learned from coaching from you was to never assume. So, my manager, maybe she sent me an email to do X, Y, Z. She assumes I understand. I probably haven't read the email properly, but I've had to acknowledge it because she needs to see that I've seen it. I acknowledge it. I read it later. We could be on completely different pages. So I had to sort of learn to be like, I'll acknowledge your email, but when I say, when I've actually gone through it, I will come back with questions to clarify, so that she didn't think that I've assumed what I'm meant to be doing. And this worked, both with who was managing me and then the people I was managing. It was sort of never assume we're on the same page.
Yeah, that is such a huge, that is, I would say, one of the biggest insights that most clients take from coaching, because you don't even realize, do you, when just day to day, that you are assuming all these things, that you are looking through your own lens when it comes to other people and what they, what they should know.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that was fantastic. So you've talked about the feeling of always being behind. So what kind of, apart from what you've already talked about, what tools or mindset shifts helped you break out of that loop in addition to that one? Never assume.
I think one of the things is mindset shift. So sort of one of the things I remember you always saying was progress, not perfection. And it's sort of, remember, you're taking small steps forward. There's always going to be loads of different things going on, but it was, what can I do now? Everything else can wait. But also, how could I increase accountability across the team? And one thing was, we spoke a lot about strengths, and then it was actually, how can I use this with the team? What are their strengths? What do they enjoy doing? What drains them? So you could get the best out of the people in the team. And it was also to get clear. I remember you said big fig. It was like beginning gratitude, finishing gratitude, for when you went into those sort of harder conversations, to be able to get clear and come out with an outcome.
Yeah, because I mean, that was very much, wasn't it, navigating rejection, the rejection sensitive
Yes.
dysphoria. So a lot of us, and this is where it gets difficult if you're a manager, right? Because you've got to have these difficult conversations. But generally, us ADHDers that do struggle with RSD and tend to people please, having those conversations, like confronting people, and that's probably one of the biggest kind of hurdles, isn't it?
It's really hard. And I think it was when you first mentioned RSD, I was sort of like, what? And then I was like, oh God, that sums it up a lot. But it was, sort of taking a step back and really pausing in those moments, to sort of think, okay, how do I approach this? Or ask, in those moments saying, actually, I need a little bit more time. I need to think about this, and then going away, realizing I don't need to have all the answers right then and there. I can take the time to sort of get through my thinking, which is something I didn't really realize before.
That was a big one, because I remember we talked about, obviously, because you are a visionary, you've got all these ideas, but that perfectionism was getting in the way of you being able to present those ideas, and that caused quite a few frustrations.
Yeah, it frustrations. Being in a meeting and sort of knowing I've got an idea, I know what it is, but I didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle, so I wouldn't sort of be very vocal about it. And it was one of our sessions, we came up with sort of 3 core things to sort of summarize it. So it was, will this drive new revenue? If that's a yes, brilliant. Will it cannibalize any other revenue? If it's a no, brilliant. And will it compromise the brand or reputation? And if that was a no, brilliant. And then I bring it in. So it's sort of 3 sort of easy things to answer. I didn't really need to do too much work. And then it was me bringing it and saying, right, who do I need to help on this? Is it tech? Is it marketing? Is it someone else? And then we go from there.
Yeah, 2 things there to note on that was having that kind of criteria, that process gets you out of your own way, you know.
Definitely.
So that was really important. And the second part of it was, what was stopping you from sharing was you kind of assumed, well, I can only bring this if I know every part of this, in terms of the process, and I can deliver every part of this. You put it all on yourself. Otherwise,
and it was realizing that's not possible and it's not feasible. And it's sort of, once you get to sort of this level in any business, you can't sort of do what you were doing before. It doesn't really work. You have to lean on other people and bring in other teams, and they're experts in their areas. I wasn't. That's why I was sort of holding back. And I guess it was learning to sort of let go of that belief or whatever it was, and just sort of to sort of be a bit more forceful is the wrong word, but be a bit more out there.
Yeah, and give yourself permission, right? In terms of, and also accepting, you have your unique strengths, right? And you can't, and you don't want to be able to do it all, right? That there are other people that can do those parts. And as a leader, like you said, it's that mindset shift that a lot of ADHDs struggle to make when they become a leader, to be able to not do those things, not feel as if they have to do those things in order to prove that they're worthy of being a leader. That's a big one I see, is no, but I need to be able to do everything if I'm the leader, right? It's like, no.
Definitely, it's not possible, but it definitely was sort of a mindset I had before. Yeah.
So what changed? So once you realized this, and that, you didn't have to, you could give yourself permission, you could, also start communicating to get your own needs met, really. Like what kind of changed once you're able to do that with your manager and your team?
It's a very good question. And I think the main thing was having the sort of the mindset shift, and creating that space from where you get an email and respond, or you're in a meeting and respond, getting that space to think, pause, and sort of either clarify what's happening and to go to the next steps. The other areas were leaning on individuals within the team and creating them more accountable, which is good for, you know, their own development and their own career progression and where they want to go in themselves. So I spent a lot more time with individuals in the team to find out where they wanted to grow, and to have those check-ins, see how they're doing with their work, and to make sure we were hitting deadlines, which before, let's say a deadline was today, I would have checked in with them today. And now looking back, I could see where you know, I would fall down because of that. I just didn't think it was. I thought, oh, I'll be fine.
Yeah, it's that whole delegate, don't abdicate. And
yes,
we are very guilty of the abdication part of that, unfortunately. Yeah, so you learned, I remember this as well, this whole kind of shift. Yeah, because we looked at leadership and what it meant for you. I remember that. And obviously there were those barriers in the way in terms of being able to let go, like, you know, of not having to do all those things. And then you shifting your focus towards your team. You intentionally remember that, like you kind of shifted your focus. Where focus goes, energy flows, because obviously in order to free you up, in order to make use of your resources, your team, you needed to start putting time there.
Yeah, it was really putting putting the team first, and also knowing that, you know, I didn't need to be going to everything. Not every meeting needed me in. It was sort of, you know, other people can be held accountable and can, you know, lead their own projects. And if they need support and they need help, we'll find it during those sort of check-ins and to see how they're getting on.
Yeah, so you started, I remember, so you started more setting the agenda. More.
Yes.
And what difference did that make?
Oh, that was huge. And one of the things I always remember is, yeah, starting to actually take charge of my own calendar. You know, not just having meetings at random times of the day, because I needed to make sure that I had that 2 hours to go through stuff, to understand, or to check in with someone. That was really important. And the other one I actually remembered earlier, was if I'm taking notes in a meeting, I'm not listening. I'm not listening. And when sort of AI and AI summaries came out, that was a game changer, because it just helped, and it made, you know, I used to hate it when you make a junior take notes. They don't want to do it, but you kind of have to. But now AI has sort of opened up, it takes that pressure off everyone.
Oh, I know, I agree. Like when I was in the law firm, you know, I quite often as well as the lawyer, sorry, in the bank actually. So the lawyers would take, junior, you know, would take the notes. And I just remember you couldn't kind of write fast enough. And, you know, with ADHD, you'd forget. So the anxiety and then and then the thing is, you got to like then circulate the notes to everyone, sense check. And it, you know, the RSD, right? Like for misquoting.
It's awful.
Horrendous. I hated them so much.
Yeah, it was. I remember looking at notes, just being like, I don't know what I've written. I don't know what I put down on this paper.
You're
I've
right.
got no outcome.
Oh,
yeah.
It is. And then the fear, I remember, yeah, I literally, you're right. I can, yeah, those memories. So, and just, you know, what a waste, right? So it's so good that AI, and that's, you know, AI is a whole nother separate conversation, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how enabling it can be for us. But it's about allowing yourself to obviously leverage those things. So the next question kind of, or we've kind of covered in terms of, you know, we talked about you stepping out so they can step up. Again, it's that same theme of, you know, being able to let go, delegate, leverage your resources. But how generally, like, or to sum up, how has coaching helped you lead? How did it help you lead your team differently?
I think in terms of lead the team differently, it was, you know, thinking, what does leadership actually mean to me? And also looking at my values and, you know, how I want to treat others and how I want others to treat me. So putting the team first was a big one. Fairness, sort of treat everyone exactly the same. And building, you know, making everyone feel like going towards something, they're building something, they're excited, they're not sort of terrified of making a mistake or whatever it is. And the next part is, I'll always take responsibility if something really fucks up. That's absolutely fine. So it's, yes, I think that's what it means to be, and also be willing to listen to people. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, no, that's again, because of RSD, that can be very difficult, particularly if you are in a management role and you are meant to be the leader. A lot of ADHDs will struggle with that kind of mindset that, I must know everything, must know how to do everything, and then also kind of not be vulnerable. It's a funny one, isn't it, with when you're a manager with ADHD, because some people would say, no, don't ever apologize. Don't kind of show your weaknesses to, the people you lead. You've got to kind of be bulletproof, but however, obviously also being able to model, right? That as leaders, we've got our weaknesses. There are things that we're not good at, and being able to admit mistakes. So, I mean, where do you sit on that? I know that's not a question that I put there, but.
No, it's, I think, I always relate to, I've got to be able to stand up, put your hands up and say, made a mistake, or this has gone wrong. And at the end of the day, that was my decision to make, but let's look at how we can fix it. Does anyone have any ideas? I think it's the more people do that who are in positions of manager or leadership, this is just in general, it gives people the permission to go for it rather than to sit there and think they can't make a mistake because then they'll get told off or whatever it is. It gives people sort of the trust to go for it. And that's how people grow and businesses grow and new innovation comes about.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so important, right? Obviously failure, and we talked about, we always reframing what that means, right? Because, failing early, failing quickly, obviously, the more you do that, the more you're going to get closer to doing it the way that it should be, the outcome that you're looking for, right? You get closer. So kind of reframing that. But for an ADHD with RSD, that can be very difficult and
very difficult.
Yeah. And also in terms of being vulnerable as a leader, what we've got to watch as well with the people pleasing, if we do kind of overshare, that oversharing, where would you say the line? You draw the line as a leader when it comes to, yes, sharing and being vulnerable and showing your team that, you are also human and have, these mistakes, but then making sure as well that you don't go into the territory of overcompensating, because of our ADHD and feeling good enough and feeling like we need to, right, do more. Like how do you manage that?
I think it's always going to be a hard one to manage. There's always sort of RSD in the background or there it is. But I think holding, myself but others accountable. Always treating everyone with kindness. You never know what's going on in the background. People, I don't think people need to share everything. But ultimately, position of manager, if someone is struggling, they should be able to come to you and you say, that's absolutely okay. So I think it's holding people accountable, but having the trust and credibility, to be okay with people being vulnerable or myself being vulnerable, and the sky's not going to fall in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's also important, isn't it, that, we do have challenges. However, that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean, or it doesn't impact on what we can do really well and where we are, and the expert or position of authority that should be listed. Does that make sense? Like, because I think the danger some ADHDs feel, if they admit these weaknesses, and assumptions can be made about that leader, and maybe that leader's not taken very seriously by their team anymore, which obviously is, that is not good. So just
I think there's I think there's a fine line between it. I think it's difficult. I think in terms of having the respect of your team, as in both ways, I always try to think of it's how I behave in the office is how I would behave outside if I was with them, and that's how I would manage it personally. But I see it's a difficult one because everyone sort of behaves differently, but people can lose respect if you do something. But I do feel that a lot of it happens maybe outside of the office and then is brought in.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That's true. And it's also about, I guess, and this is another skill that us leaders with ADHD need to kind of build that muscle, about setting the boundary, about maintaining and communicating them again. So if someone, again, is taking liberties, or, oh, well, you're saying this about yourself, so I'm just gonna, you know.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. I feel quite strongly that, yeah, no one should be, if there's a weakness or something they're not as good at, that shouldn't be taken as a way to go and, you know, jab them or be mean or undermine. It's not fair. So I think, yeah, one of my, you know, big things is you treat everyone with kindness and fairness. And if I'm better at doing one thing but someone else is amazing at doing the other, then definitely you work together, you lean on them and vice versa. But you don't jab someone or undermine an ADHD. It could be sort of detrimental to their own sanity, because I would go home and you replay things in your head and you need to be able to let it go.
Yeah, that is something actually as well, really important, isn't it, for managers with ADHD to be aware of when they're supporting and instructing and working with employees with ADHD, that there are many ADHDs that will ruminate and get caught in cycles. So that ability to be really clear and address any objections, but even more so, it's important for that ADHD to feel safe enough to be able to even check in, right, with the manager and get clear, so they're not, you know, spending the whole weekend going, oh my gosh, I said this, my manager must think this, but just to check in. Right.
Definitely. And you know, to have confidentiality, the things that are said, you know, from manager, you know, if I say something upwards or someone says something to me, that it remains between you and they don't need to worry about someone else finding out. I think that's hugely important. Yeah, the confidentiality aspect of it, because it builds trust within any business.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you say to another manager with ADHD who's on the fence about whether coaching, you know, ADHD coaching or some type of, you know, manager training for ADHD is, you know, is it worth it? What would you say?
Very simply, I'd say 100% it's worth it. You know, it's a game changer, I think, not only for, you know, for myself, but I think for, you know, businesses in general, to be able to utilize ADHD as in a way that the brain actually works, rather than the old sort of, you know, you must do X, Y, Z. It can unlock huge potential. And yeah, I think, yeah, I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's on the fence, and say, you know, give it a go. If you come across ADHD coaching, you're halfway there. Just sort of, you know, take the jump.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, the fact that you are now, I think basically what's kind of, you know, in terms of your potential and your path now, I think it speaks volumes about your recommendation for ADHD coaching, given what path you're on now. So would you like to share?
Exactly. No, thank you. Yeah, sort of during the process of working with Stephanie, and I realized I'd been on the hamster wheel for sort of 10 years, doing what I thought I should be doing as a career-wise. And actually, I wanted to help people and work with others. And, you know, Stephanie sort of showed me the ADCA website and all this. We spoke about it in general because I thought this is what I want to do. And I took that leap in March last year. I've just finished sort of what do you call it, basic training, and yeah, so I'm looking to start becoming an ADHD coach.
Good. And we're looking forward to having you on board.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, you're going to be amazing. And yeah, because, and just before we finish up, it was, remember, it was the signature strength. So one of the first things doing coaching, it's about you identifying your strengths. And then also remember, we got the values, we unearthed those. But then importantly, we also looked at the things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember? Do you remember?
Yeah. I do remember it. I do remember it very significantly. And it was yeah, looking at my strengths and the values. It was sort of, I was chasing something which I didn't want to be chasing. It didn't align with sort of who I actually was. It didn't give me that excitement or drive to further. And sort of this is how I came about wanting to be an ADHD coach. You know, I couldn't recommend, yeah, working with Stephanie more. We covered so much in our sessions and developed that, yeah, it was, yeah, transformational.
No, and just so pleased, honestly, and very excited for you. And obviously the sports, your background in tennis, and I was just, don't know if you heard Connor, the record.
No, I haven't. I couldn't able to join earlier.
Yeah, so yeah, as you know, you met Connor last year at the office party we had, and so he's from IMG Media. And remember, we did that talk for IMG Media. The guy from Premier League was there as well. And you know, we talked about, you know, having a chat, given that, you know, a lot of people in the sports world, the very high performing players, usually will have ADHD. And
it is, yeah, you see more and more are sort of coming out saying they have ADHD, and then there's the problem with the doping federations, that they might not be able to take the medication because they weren't diagnosed early enough and it could be accused of doping. So there's a whole thing within that. And yeah, the IMG Media, I thought that was amazing when you did that awareness training day, because, you know, I worked there for 7 years, which is so strange. It just sort of happened by coincidence, and that was 7 years. Then it's, yeah, great business, great company, and the sport aspect is, yeah, it brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, and so it's again about bringing those loves in your life together, and that's where I really see your massive potential, and because there is such a need, and
yeah,
that, you know, there's a void in that space. So we will have that meeting with Connor soon. He can't come to our office party, but yeah, we'll definitely get that together. So Charlotte, thank you so much. It's been so helpful for everyone, I'm sure, to hear kind of your experience. And I will speak to you next week. I think we've got
I will speak to you next week.
Thank
you.
No,
thank you very much.
Thanks, Charlotte. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, and you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so now that was Charlotte, and we're going to now bring in, I think, Ash Phillips. I did see him before as an attendee. I think he's going to be joining as a panelist. Here he is.
Hello.
Hello, Ash.
Look at that. Seamless.
Hey,
Seamless.
good to see you.
Seamless. It's almost like I didn't turn up a couple of hours ago accidentally.
I just said I saw you. No, I saw you. I'm like, oh, hang on. Does he know what time?
So sorry. I had so many links. I was like, I just want to join to check out what's going on, and then I joined the conversation accidentally, but that's fine. That's fine.
Good, yeah. No, and thank you for being here, because obviously it is Halloween. You should probably be out there at Halloween.
I have, I've actually used it as an excuse to eat a whole bag of Tang Fastics. So I'm on a sugar high right now, and
quite right.
Yeah, but I am. You've caught me in the office. There is nobody else in. They've all.
Right. Okay.
We won't keep. Well, you know, thank you so much again. Honestly,
it's cool. It's cool. I'm coming off the back of 4 weeks of incredible busyness, but we will talk about how getting into crazy intense seasons is probably something that works with my ADHD. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. So have you met Tim before?
We've not met officially. Hi, Tim.
Very nice to meet you, Ash.
Yes.
Hi.
So
how are you doing?
So he's our head of sales and engagements, and has been doing a killer job in interviewing.
Legend.
So we've got a few questions for you, Ash. But Ash, do you want to maybe introduce yourself, obviously, in terms of background and
Absolutely. So I'm Ash. God, how do you describe what I do? I'm an entrepreneur by trade, and I support other entrepreneurs. That's my job. It's very meta. I run an organization called Rebellious. We build, create, and deliver innovation programs that support business leaders and startups. We do that internally ourselves. So we design those. One of our most famed initiatives is our Rebel Meetups. They are free events that exist across 9 countries. I've been running for about 13 years now, supported 22,000. I actually think it's 21,988 as of this afternoon. So
Wow.
22,000
Wow.
probably by tomorrow,
That's amazing.
people today, and I'm really proud of that. And then somewhere along the way, people started to say, hey, can you support me directly? So I do that as an advisor on a one-to-one basis as well. I consult organizations who want to be a bit more startup-y. I help people who are trying to build communities. And sometimes I do speaking gigs and things too. So yeah, I'm busy. I've got fingers in lots of pies. And I did all of that before I realized that the reason I did that was probably because I had a spicy brain and nobody knew. So well, everyone knew. I just didn't admit it.
Right.
So yeah, so that's me. That's what I do.
Well, that's very interesting to hear, Ash. Again, thank you very much for coming.
No.
I mean, the first question I was going to ask was,
I beat you to it.
tell us a bit about your background. But so before the entrepreneurship, what was there before that?
Not a lot really. School. So I'm Bristol born and raised. I went to primary school, nursery, high school, college, university, all about 5 minutes from my parents' house. We didn't really have too much growing up, so didn't have a choice to go any further afield. And I went to uni just because I had just enough grades to go to uni, and I think careers advisors are the best salespeople without realizing. You know this well, Tim, as the salesperson there. It's closed questioning. It's not what are you going to do after school. It's what are you going to do at university. And so I did that. Realized academia wasn't for me. Again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And wanted to work for myself. So I left. Worked part-time for a bunch of years. I built a marketing agency temporarily. Trying to figure out what the hell to do along the way. And then eventually realized how lonely that journey was and wanted to find other people like me. So I did. And then it got out of hand, is the long story short. So I left that, jumped into this, and the rest is history, basically.
That sounds. Let's go back a little bit there. You said you started a marketing agency by yourself.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people that might sound like quite a massive thing to do. So so how did you manage that?
Yeah, good question. Not very well is the short answer. I knew I wanted to work for myself, and so I just had to pick what that was, and I wasn't super hands-on, so I probably wasn't going to go and be an arts and crafts person or an electrician or whatever it might have been, tradie. And I was just trying to find that common denominator of my skills. So I was quite creative, but I was also good at computers, but I wasn't deep enough to be a techie. And this was before coding really was a thing. So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to put those two things together. I can design stuff. I can just about build a website. So I downloaded a legal version of Adobe at the time, which is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke because every creative will laugh at that because they've done that too in a past life, and started designing logos and things for my friends. They weren't great, and I wasn't sure of my rates, and so I would just charge £100 here and do something for somebody, and eventually you do stuff for people that are friends of friends, and eventually after that you do things for people that you don't know, and that's when you finally have some sort of business. And so over time those rates went up, and then I partnered with somebody else to build a bigger agency. We pivoted, started doing social media specifically because we were young at a time when social media was coming up, but we were fairly aware of how to operate that as a business. And that was great, and that was the last thing I did before I started running the business that I currently run now. So yeah, it was a real process of making it up as I go along. I remember buying Business for Dummies, the book, and YouTube was my university, I think. So yeah, it was a make it up as you go along process, really.
That's fascinating. I think there's a huge amount of things which people will relate to. But I think firstly, your ability to find something you did well and then isolate those skills, find that passage to do it, and then try and allocate that. And it doesn't matter if you don't do well, it's trial and error in a way. But I think the first thing is what I'd be really interested to know is what made you realize you didn't want to work for someone else.
Well, I think there's two answers to that, right? One is the pre-ADHD lens, and the other one is the post-ADHD lens, and in hindsight. And so at the time, it was wanting, there was a couple of things. So one was, I remember seeing a salary table at school or college, looking to see who earns the most when you leave, what can I do? And I wasn't excited about most of the jobs because there was dentist on there, was a pilot on there, didn't really like flying that much at the time. I wasn't about to be a brain surgeon anytime soon. So what could I do? And there was this mysterious title at the top of that table that said managing director. And I was like, I've never heard of that. What the hell's that? And the number next to it was 0 to infinite. And I was like, well, that's weird. What's that? And obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing. You look back and you're like, oh, that was novelty. And my brain was looking at that and going, that's really interesting and curious, and latching onto it. So I chose that. But this was also at the time where entrepreneurship was starting to get a little bit more sexy, right? Because The Apprentice was a thing and Dragon's Den was a thing, and neither of them are a great representation of entrepreneurship, but they were entertainment at least. And so those things all came together. And I think the key moment that I remember was talking about ideas. I had ideas all the time. I still have ideas. They drive me crazy. My nan at the time said, and I remember these words viscerally. She said, "You always talk about things, but you never do anything about them." And that was the fire I needed to get started. I kind of need her back, to be honest, to kick my ass every day. But I remember those words at least. And that was it. So yeah, that was a combination of things got me started. And as I say, the ADHD lens in hindsight is it was a want for novelty, a want for difference, a channel for my creativity, the dopamine high and the RSD low roller coaster every single day that I love and hate in equal measure, and still do. So yeah, that was what it was. It was those things without the knowledge basically at the time that I have now.
That's that's a fascinating story.
I mean, it's why, I will probably get onto this question, but I don't want to jump ahead, but it's almost certainly why ADHDers are 3 times more likely to start a business. I'm sure you've had that stat throughout the rest of the day today.
Absolutely, and I think it just relates so well because I think it's that not willing part of it. I think there's a lot of that not really willingness to fit in that box of a role in a company. You do this, you do that. You have to fit in that box. Your room for creativity is fairly minimal, and you have to do what you're told all day.
Yeah.
Whereas entrepreneurship is essentially it's whatever you want to make it in many ways. The
good and bad.
The only rules are you have to make money.
Yeah. 100%. You get to do whatever you want, and the problem is that you do whatever you want, right? Like exactly that.
So aside, just on from that, so what do you like most about it? Would that go, if you could answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, it is the variety really, which obviously tickles that part of my brain for novelty, which is there is no day that is the same really. I mean, some days do need to be the same consistently, otherwise you do just chase your tail and become a busy fool. But yeah, it's there's something different every day. The last 4 weeks, as I alluded to earlier, have just been insane, like so busy and so exhausting that I have, and this isn't a brag at all, I need to find a day off or two at some point, but I've developed a twitch in my eye from how exhausted I am, right?
Okay. Back in coaching you go, Ash. Next
No,
week.
but your words still ring in my ears, Steph, from our conversation, from me saying, look, I and it wasn't about that specifically. It was mostly about deadlines and how I don't deal with them very well, and trying to plan better because I've never, I never used to do my coursework at school on time. And you saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, but me hearing at least, have I ever been able to change that? No. And then why am I trying to just work with it instead? And so the last 4 weeks have been me working with it, right? Having that incredibly high dopamine bunch of time, which is probably too long, let's face it, but still, like this is just the way the month has ended up being. And then knowing that there will become a period some point in the middle of November where I'll take it completely off, through being forced to, because that's how my brain works, and then coming back to it again. So that's what I like. I think is just having extreme periods of on, extreme periods of off, the ability to feel such a high when there is a win. I don't like feeling such a low when there's a loss. I'm sure we'll come to that, but yeah, it's a roller coaster. It's a perfect career analogy for the way my brain works, basically.
Yeah, and I think that will relate to a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs who've started companies and don't want to fit into that box. I think the ADHD lens definitely works there. And on the subject of that, when did you find out you had ADHD?
I remember it's a weird one because I guess there's different answers to it. I think for a long time I've always had this tongue-in-cheek joke that I've got it. And then there was a point a couple of years ago when I was in my apartment and one of my friends had gone through her assessment. And we were talking and I think on WhatsApp or something, and she said, "Oh, let me send you my paperwork, and then I'll tell you answer the questions that I've just answered, and then based on what answers I've got, I'll tell you whether you probably do or not."
Yeah.
So it was like, pre-diagnosis, and so I answered, and she was like, "Well, if I have it and those are your answers, then you definitely have it." And I thought, and then she started saying certain things that related to how my life had been. She said, she said, "Let me ask you a question. How many books have you got on your bedside table right now that you haven't finished?" And I literally looked around and was like, it's like she's in the room. There were like 3 or 4 books there with bookmarks in them. And it was at that moment that 2 things happened. One I expected, and the other one I didn't. The one I expected was that my whole life made sense. Like I look back now, like jokingly through my school reports that say he's good, but he'd be great if he just stopped talking. And you're like, that's interesting. Like, why didn't anybody spot it at that point? Obviously, there wasn't enough education. I had OCD as a teenager that was pretty debilitating for a number of years. My parents weren't educated enough to spot that and understand it well enough, and I know the correlation between the two, and so that should have been enough to say maybe there's a neurodivergence thing going on here. We should chat to somebody about it. Wasn't enough. But all of that made sense when I had that realization, and that was the thing I expected, I guess, to happen, or at least felt natural. It's like a light was just kind of in my life at that point. Oh, this is who I am. But the thing I didn't expect to happen was it gave me a new challenge, which was, okay, so who am I? Do I even have control over the things that I'm doing? Like, is this ruled my life the whole time? It's like discovering suddenly that free will isn't a thing and everything has been a subject of the way you're built. And so there was a bit of an exponential crisis that happened shortly after because of that realization, which led me to you guys and Steph. So yeah, that was the experience for me.
That's again, I'm sure something that will resonate to a lot of people. I think a lot of people experience that moment after diagnosis where they look back and think, what if things have been different? What if I had had this answer earlier? But were you yourself, you were in a fairly good place at the time? You were doing well, I suppose, on the surface.
No, actually, weirdly,
Okay.
I was intensely burnt out, and I think I think discovering that wasn't necessarily exacerbating a little bit. It probably was, but it was possibly part of what started a bit of that recovery, because at least it was a prompting point. Up until that point, it had just been a process of like, I feel exhausted. I don't know why, because I never really knew what burnout was until then. So yeah, it came at either the ideal time or the worst time ever, depending on the lens you look through, really.
But was it was it more of a relief in terms of not? I don't think the word label is a good thing to have, but kind of an answer, I'd say.
So this is a real philosophical question because, like, ignorance is bliss. There's a world where I could have never known, and then I have this conversation with friends a lot where I observe, at least I observe, especially across my clients, as they get more and more self-aware, they gain the ability to analyze their own existence more and more, and as a result of that they often feel underachieving, slightly more depressed, etc., because they have the capability to do it. And so I do wonder sometimes if my ADHD wouldn't piss me off as much as it does sometimes if I didn't know I had it, because I would just be thinking, well, I've had a bad day today and I don't know. Now I have the ability to analyze why something's happened, and that's part of me coming up with frameworks and formats that help me to do better. So net, I'm probably in a better position, but it doesn't come without the mental gymnastics of going, oh, that's why you do it. I'm annoyed that I can't really help that. How do I fix it? And then working from there. So some days I just wish I never knew, but that's just me being, I guess, transparent and honest. I feel like some people might resonate with that.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure it's almost it's a very difficult, as you say, almost philosophical question. It's sometimes better to not to know something to know it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other people who feel very grateful that they do know it, because then they can do something about it, and they've had these questions where maybe there's been these problems they haven't understood, and then they can put that into a box and seek help with that.
100%. Yeah.
But also
But
the
now,
narrative.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, now importantly, knowing what it is, you know, I do often wonder how I feel about the statement that it's a quote unquote superpower, but I know how I can use it now, you know.
Yeah.
And not least because, you know, I've done the work with Steph to be able to figure out what those frameworks are. So yeah.
Yeah, but also the piece around negative self-talk, right? Because if you don't know about the ADHD, if you're not looking through that lens, right, then we're just lazy, selfish, you know, like always procrastinating.
Yeah.
It's always, you know, by not being able to look through that lens, we're pretty brutal on ourselves,
we are.
right? Whereas if you can look through the lens, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, how that's always, I mean, for some ADHDs, that's still not going to be, it's still going to be difficult to accept and to let yourself off the hook, basically.
Yeah.
Some,
But yeah, knowing why it happens does create the, you know, the ability to kind of get past it, I guess, understand it. I know we had a conversation once that it was a real nice realization, and it sticks with me to today, which was, you know, I found myself going through periods often of I guess you can call it depression, because of a negative spiral, at least, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to fix it or why it was happening so often. And then I realized through conversation with you that, you know, it's very likely that the negative feeling was causing a dopamine high, and therefore I was latching onto it and spiraling on the negative feeling because it was giving me an emotional response or a hormonal response. And so when that happens now, when I find myself having a bit of overthink or a bit of like negative self-talk, and I can catch myself, and I can go, oh, I know I'm doing this because it's giving me a response, so let me just, you know, understand that, let it go, and then move into a more neutral, at least, mindset, and back into a positive one. So it's definitely helped me with, you know, avoiding negative feelings and I guess those intrusive thoughts and stuff. So
yeah, that's huge. I mean, that, and not every ADHD could do that. And I remember talking to you about this as well. You know, even with all the coaching and the medication, some ADHDs can't kind of look through that lens at themselves and be that detached observer to be able to catch things and be able to shift them, setting intention. But you can. So in a way, the ADHD, you know, diagnosis, knowing you have that, the coaching has helped you in that way, at least, that you can disrupt.
I like a project, and I guess I just treat myself like my own.
Yeah, gives you something, you know.
I'll be, if I get to a point where I'm not, I was going to say broken, that's completely the wrong term. If I get to the point where I'm not a problem to solve anymore, then I'll get bored. So there's always got to be something a little bit.
That's another plus about ADHD. You don't have to worry about that ever happening.
True. Yeah. 100%. Always going to be confused about
project developer.
Yeah. In ADHD.
There's no such thing as a perfect person.
You'll never get bored. Exactly. There'll always be problems. So yeah, don't worry about that.
I'd be interested to know, going back to in terms of as an entrepreneur, we did talk about why so many ADHDs would go into entrepreneurship. Like, in your experience, what if you're going to think about the kind of characteristics of the way you see your ADHD, how do you think that's made you stronger as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we spoke about the fact that entrepreneurs are 3 times more likely to start a business. There's a correlation, causation, both in there somewhere. I've worked with 1,000 founders over a decade, so I get to see the common denominators of them and myself. And so for me, and I think I answer on behalf of other people here as a result of that work, but also specifically for me, it's, you know, there is always a problem to solve, and I'm able and willing and excited to solve that problem. It's something that I relish as opposed to run away from, so that's good. Sometimes I look for them too much, and that's an issue, but at the very least, if there's something that like that comes up, by, I guess, that extrapolates into crisis. There are often times of crisis when you're running a business, and people, you know, I say this flippantly, but I'm fairly sure this is, you know, the common understanding that people with ADHD are the best people that you need in a crisis, because we're calm under crisis, and so on and so on. So yeah, I'm good at that. Again, sometimes I seek it more than I need to. Times of unrest or where I feel comfortable, and so the opposite can be true as well. Creativity, you know, I yeah, it allows me to utilize my creativity in many ways, and then that extends to becoming, you know, what's the phrase? Jack of all trades, master of none, but sometimes better than master of one. I'm you know, good at lots of things. I don't think I'm a master at any one thing specifically. I'd say I'm very good at lots of things. But that's great, because it means I'm kind of a one-man army inside my own business. Any design work you ever see, it's me. Any copy you ever see, it's me. Any marketing stuff you ever see, it's me. All our events is me, etc., etc., etc.
Should you be telling me this, Ash, after some of our discussions?
I am delegating, don't worry. I've got 4 interns right now. You'll be very proud.
Back to coaching, Ash. We're getting you back in.
It's good because I can, at the very least, you know, speak the language of those subject matters.
Yeah.
So while I can see that there are experts that are better than me at those things specifically, I can touch base on them and at least guide everybody in those processes. So yeah, it's those are the superpowers I get inside my business. And it also, again, I guess you might be able to relate to this, Tim, but because of that time of you know, oh, you both can, I'm sure, because that time, that element that means that I'm good in a crisis, we're kind of almost unkillable. Like, it's hard for me to thrive sometimes, but we've been around for 13 years now, and we've not died. And there have been times when we've been almost bankrupt. There was a time when we had more money going out in a month than we had left in the bank account. That's not a good combination. By the end of that month, I had our best sales month ever, and I'd sold 40 grand worth of sponsorship in a month, and half of it was already in the bank account. And I'm like, why can't I do that in times of rest? That's a bigger. Me and Steph have worked on that, but yeah, it's yeah. So we're kind of unkillable as a result, and I think that's true to say for a lot of ADHDers, because they will find a problem, answer to the problem. They'll be creative and come up with new ways and directions. They're resilient as hell, and they're good at sales often as well, because they're great speakers. So good combination to have for sure.
Absolutely. And I think there's some of you said there as well, is that almost seems like there's not an addiction, but maybe a looking for a buzz or that kind of like that thing of going up and down.
Yeah, it's a drug for me. For sure.
It's fun. At the end of the day, it's better than sitting, you know, in an office and being told what to do by someone else.
100%.
Which is
actually, weirdly, you know, this is very tongue-in-cheek, but there's probably a reason why I've never touched a recreational drug, and it is because entrepreneurship does enough for me. So, you know, it's probably more expensive than a drug habit sometimes, but yeah.
I was going to say it's a lot safer, but it depends on the job.
It does.
I mean, that leads very well into the next question. I mean, what are the downsides of being an entrepreneur with ADHD? And I'm sure Stephanie can come in here, because there are risks, there are problems which go on that path. So
yeah, which Ash had already kind of touched upon, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I'll add to the bits that I've already said, I guess, is RSD is such a huge thing. Like, when you land your first client ever, for anybody watching this that might be considering starting something, you know, it's the biggest high you ever have, because you sat there going, wow, if someone wants to exchange money, time, love for something that I'm offering, that's incredible. The moment they quit as a customer is the worst day of your life, because you're like, oh my God, they hate me. What have I done wrong? Obviously, it's rubbish, and you spiral. And then it takes a long time for you to realize that that's not personal. They might have just not had the money. You might not have communicated it well, whatever. The thing that I observe, and I don't know I have an answer for this, I think it's just, you know, being aware of it and reacting to it the best you can, is that I find across my clients and the entrepreneurs that I support and the founders I support and myself, I don't like the negative stimulus. It doesn't feel good, so I minimize it. It's a wave. It's a big roller coaster. You go high up, low down, high up, low down. Over time, I want to mitigate the negative response.
A lot of people do that,
We
yeah.
spoke about this stuff,
Yeah.
and so, but a wave is equal in measure, and so I can't keep the ups and avoid the belows. And so what I do is I mitigate that negative emotional response, but in the process start to mitigate that positive emotional response. And I think that's where you get the meme of the sociopathic CEO in movies and TV shows, that they're very emotionless. You know, American Psycho is obviously a famous one, although he's an actual psycho, so that might be a disclaimer there. But you know, you see them in movies and TV all the time, and I do wonder if that's a reflection on real life, because those people have just numbed themselves to response. And I think that's one of the negatives I see with being, firstly, an entrepreneur in general, but definitely exacerbated by the RSD that comes with being ADHD. So yeah, that's a challenge for sure. But my advice to anybody experiencing that is to celebrate the wins whenever you can, and kind of feel the lows if you can. There is, you know, I'll leave this point with this nerdy advice, but one of my favorite films and books is Dune. And there is a quote or a mantra in Dune, which is about, and I won't try and say it because I always forget exactly how it goes, but it's about understanding what fear is, and to let it kind of come through you, pass through you. And once it's gone, you can observe that it's gone, how you felt at the time. And I feel like that's the same with what we were just talking about there as far as the RSD goes. Understand that you're going to respond to it, know that it's happening and why it's happening, and then let it pass and then carry on, you know. So do that while celebrating the highs. Good combination.
No, that is, yeah, where focus goes, energy flows. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very valuable advice, I think, for anybody to, particularly in business or almost in any circumstances, to feel that emotion, to engage with it, but don't let it take you over. Don't let it run your life, and don't let it rule you. I think that's hugely important advice in any circumstances.
Yeah.
Great to move on now to the ADHD.
Because I know it's nearly
just a few quick words about the ADHD coaching side of things and how that's helped you with your journey as well. Be really
100%.
to hear.
Yeah, definitely, and I'll keep it brief because I know we're at time. Super powerful for me, you know, when I found out. So I got my coaching via the incredibly helpful yet quite complicated now and in demand access to work program, but was incredible. And then found Steph through a number of recommendations, and yeah, it kind of changed the game for me, because one of the things for me is that I guess I've practiced that self-awareness enough where I sometimes wonder if I'm even coachable or if I'm able to be therapized in any way, because I don't want to turn up and have a conversation with someone who's just going to say things that I already know about myself. I need accountability, I need my ass kicked, and I need someone to pattern interrupt basically and say things in a way, take me in a direction that I'm not expecting, to make me think and feel in different ways. And that's exactly what we did together over the period of us working. Picked up some you know, great frameworks that I either use every day, all day, or you know, I can employ at specific times whenever I need to, that really work. And as you've already heard, there are things that I gained from our work together that I repeat to other people now. So, you know, not only I watched the previous session, and I'm not about to become an ADHD coach yet, but I guess I'm a quasi one. You know, I'm passing on your advice to other people regardless, which is super, super helpful. And it's it was game changing for me for sure.
That was a pleasure. And just on that, it was interesting because when I was coaching Ash, I was doing this business program and I was coaching him, and you get these mentors, like these, you know, amazing, the experts in the field helping, you know, business startups and growth for businesses. And one of the mentors suggested, it was Ash. It was like, book your mentoring with Ash. And I was like, is this a cold business? This is really strange.
Yeah, it's kind of strange getting coached by your client and vice versa would have been really weird. So yeah, it's it's strange, but you know, I'm out there. If people want to access me for support, they end up finding me sometimes. But similarly, I would absolutely not hesitate to recommend Steph. I actually did that this morning to somebody who is looking for an ADHD coach, because it's just absolutely game changing for me. I think it's yeah, I can't say any more than that. Really, it's just killer, because we all need accountability, and that at the very least was exactly what I got from it. You know,
Bit of a kick up the as well.
out the backside.
Yeah.
To use your words, which I use all the time now, it's, you know, throwing the backpack over the wall.
Yeah, I love that we finished the summit with that as
Throwing
well.
back over the wall.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. That's a great way to.
Oh, actually,
Thank you so
it's and it's always been such a pleasure. And equally, as you know, when you're, supporting someone, you as well, you get so much from the person you're coaching and supporting. So thank you as well.
Yeah, no, you're
For
welcome.
your wisdom. But we're really looking forward to, as we grow Ascend as well, in our programs, our entrepreneurs programs, plans to definitely work together. So
definitely, we got loads of people in our community that are definitely neurodivergent, whether they know it or not, because they're all entrepreneurs. So
yeah, no, looking forward to it. But yeah, let's get in touch soon.
Yeah.
100%. Thank you so
thank
much for
you
having
so
me.
much.
Thanks for running this. And yeah, I'll speak soon.
Thanks, Ash.
Thank you so much, Ash. Cheers. Thank you. Have a good evening. Happy evening.
So guys, I hope you enjoyed. Firstly, thank you so much for being here. Again, I think it speaks volumes about your commitment to ADHD, to understanding more about it, and very grateful that you have showed up and that you've listened. And I hope you've got a lot out of this. Do get in touch if you've, everything that you've had today. If you think that an ADHD coaching, it really is amazing. Hopefully you've seen that now. Do get in touch with us through empower-hd.com. And obviously in terms of business and corporate training, that's ascend-hd.com. But honestly, thank you so much for being here. Do get in touch with us, subscribe to our newsletters, and have a fantastic Halloween.
Absolutely, have a fantastic Halloween, guys. And as Stephanie said, get in touch if you need any kind of support with your business, if you feel like ADHD coaching might help you, get in touch. And I would like to say just a big thank you to Ollie Stewart, to all the psychiatrists.
Yeah, the psychiatrists.
And to everyone who's joined us
Hang on,
today.
Anna wants to, let's let her, hang on, here we go, allowed to talk. Hello, Anna, you've raised your hand.
Oh, hi there. I just wanted, sorry, I actually missed your conference because we were away and the weather is awful here. I was wondering, is it recorded or any bits of it we can still access?
They will,
yeah.
They will all be available on a YouTube channel in the coming weeks.
Yeah, but
so
we will
look out for them
send
there, and we'll send out some information.
Yeah.
It will be on our websites and LinkedIn as well. So we'll let you know.
Oh, okay. And I
link.
don't have your, I just have the link to join. I don't actually have the link to your, could you just post it in the chat again, please?
Oh, the website link? Yeah. Because what we'll do, everyone that signed up as well and registered for the summit, we will definitely get in touch with. So yeah,
the chat is disabled actually, so I don't know if you, just give me your website and I will. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can see.
So you got to send ADHD.com, and then so that's for the businesses, and then empower ADHD.com is for like the individual coaching.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it like a new organization? I've never heard of it. Empower.
Well, so I used to ADHD Advocate back in 2018. So I founded that nearly 8 years ago now, I guess. And so we've evolved we've evolved from the ADHD Advocate to Ascend ADHD and Empower ADHD, because advocacy is not the way to go. We've learned it's all about partnerships and collaboration. No one wins with advocacy. So we decided to, ADHD Advocate definitely played its part, raised ADHD awareness and helped advocate at a time when awareness was really not there. But now we know what needs to happen, and that's why we created Ascend ADHD and Empower ADHD. So
okay, thank you. And when you say advocacy, do you help with like kids education as well, or is it just adults for like business kind of minded?
No, we should have so day one of the summit, you'd probably be interested in the recording for day one, that was family and education. So through Empower,
please.
We can
do you mind if I book a free call? I can see there is a book a free call.
That is book a free call. And also, if you want to get in touch with Empower ADHD, you can go to the Empower website, which is there.
Yeah, and you can book.
So I am on it, and I see I'm on the Empower right now, and I see the free call with different people. I don't know who to book with because I don't know you guys. There's like 1, 2, 3, 5.
Yeah,
One,
I know.
two,
Why don't
4,
you
5,
email?
6, 7, 8 or
So
something.
please
Who's available?
email me.
Well,
I
yeah,
will just go for anyone who's available like straight away. But
Yeah.
I need
Why
some
don't-
understanding in
yeah.
the legal system. I just need someone with a good understanding of the legal S&D system and tribunals and things like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, look, you should reach. That's my email address. Is it?
Did you
Where
press-
are you based? Which country are you in anyway?
We're in the
London,
UK. We're in
UK.
Yeah.
London.
Okay.
We're in,
Great. Yeah.
Muswell Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Muswell Hill. Oh gosh, it's not far. We're on the other side of North London.
Oh, right. But yes, but we do a lot of our support online, so you could just reach out and we'll have a chat.
No, of course, but it's more that I need somebody who's local and understand the system and the local authorities kind of like manipulative tricks and things like that, you know,
Yeah.
so that they can understand what my situation is. But
Yeah.
anyway, so
Let-
yeah,
let's-
so who shall I book with?
Yeah, email me. We've
Yeah.
got to run, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
do email me. I put my email address in the chat because, you know, obviously the background, I was doing advocacy for a while. So let's have a call and we can have a chat and I'll see what we can do. Yeah.
That's Stephanie, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Stephanie. That's
All
me.
right. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
again, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
being
so
here.
much for joining.
And happy
Thank you.
Halloween, everyone.
Happy Hall-
Yeah.
Yeah.
You too. Bye. Bye.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.